Hi, welcome to my channel. The full version of the audiobook is available on my Patreon. You can quickly find it through the link in my profile description. Thank you for your support.
Chapter 1 Violation of Professional Ethics. Dismissed. June 2015, North Rhine-Westphalia, Germany. At the Borussia Mönchengladbach youth training ground was somewhat subdued. Youth training director Blair sat at the table, holding a data sheet in his hand, his chest rising and falling slightly, and frowned as he spoke to a black-haired Chinese boy in front of him. Feng, shouldn't you explain to me why you were late for morning training 4 times this week? And according to rumors, you also seem to frequent nightclubs and are obsessed with video games. If that's the case, why don't we choose a better approach and just give up on football altogether? What do you think? Blair's eyes held a hint of disgust, but he tried his best to keep his tone calm. Why waste time here? Faced with Blair's questioning, Feng remained expressionless, shook his head, and said, "Mr. Blair, I think my hobbies haven't affected my performance in the game." "Didn't it affect your game?" Blair seemed to laugh in exasperation, throwing the youth team statistics sheet in his hand in front of Feng and asking with a stern face. "Late training and excessive drinking don't affect your performance. Look at your recent data reports. Why are your running statistics on the field getting worse and worse? In the last match against Hamburg U17, your running distance was a paltry 3,600 meters. 3,600 meters, I really can't believe this is a record run by a 17-year-old player, it's just too pitiful. This isn't the first or second time. 2 weeks ago against Bayern Munich U17, you only ran 3,900 meters. Do you think you're Berbatov? Berbatov is a famously dashing figure in the football world. Because of his elegant playing style and ability to achieve outstanding results with minimal movement, he is jokingly called "handsome guy" by fans. Blair grew angrier as he spoke, and pulled a cigarette from the table in an attempt to calm himself down. But even with the cigarette in his mouth, he couldn't find a lighter. With a click, the lighter ignited. Blair was startled, and then he saw a small flame rise in front of him. He habitually shielded his eyes from the wind with one hand, lit a cigarette, and only came to his senses after taking a puff. "You still smoke?" Blair's face darkened as he questioned him, and the atmosphere suddenly became awkward. How could that be? Feng looked helpless, stood there and spread his hands, putting the lighter back. "It's just for lighting mosquito coils." Seemingly wanting to quickly change the subject, Feng continued, "Mr. Blair, I have always believed that a player, as long as he can contribute to the team, is a good player. If you can shoot and assist, you can be considered an excellent professional player. Instead of being as narrow-minded as you think." Blair held a high position as the youth academy director at Borussia Mönchengladbach, wielding absolute power within the youth teams. No youth academy player had ever dared to speak to him like that. "What nonsense are you spouting?" Mr. Blair was visibly furious, spitting as he spoke, "A chaotic private life. Frequent breaches of professional ethics. Other players practice hard on the field, but what about you? You spend your nights in nightclubs and even your holidays are spent playing video games. Is this the attitude of a professional player? I seriously doubt whether you truly love the sport of football. Let me tell you, don't think that just because you have regular playing time in the youth league, you can let yourself go. Borussia Mönchengladbach has never lacked talent, and it certainly doesn't need a player like you who lacks professional ethics. If you can't immediately change these appalling behaviors, you might as well not stay at the club." Feng looked at Blair's furious face and said with some regret, "If that's the case, I accept Mr. Blair's decision." Blair was stunned again, never expecting Feng to be so ungrateful. Okay, he exclaimed, "Good, 3 times in a row, it's utterly incomprehensible, rotten wood." Blair took out a termination agreement from the cabinet, made some minor modifications, and placed it in front of Feng. Feng raised an eyebrow, sat down in the chair, glanced at the contract briefly, and after finding no problems, wrote down his name. 10 minutes later, the hasty termination ceremony ended, and Feng walked towards the door. With a click, Feng lit a cigarette, leaving Blair looking completely bewildered behind him. "You." Blair nearly fainted from anger. 10 minutes later. Feng left the administration building and returned to his dormitory to start packing his luggage. In the time to come, I will continue playing football and strive to become a professional player, that's for sure. So the first thing to do is to contact a new club for a trial. During this period, he definitely couldn't stay in the youth training dormitory in Borussia Mönchengladbach anymore, so Feng needed to find a place to stay first. Carrying his luggage, Feng walked out of the club's gate and habitually threw his cigarette butt on the ground and stomped it out. At the same time, a mechanical voice rang in his mind. Host detected to have finished smoking a cigarette, stamina plus 0.001. Indeed, the reason Feng dared to easily abandon the precious opportunity of Borussia Mönchengladbach as U17 youth training team and leave so arrogantly was because he possessed the system that is standard for transmigrators. In his eyes now, all the excellent clubs are simply incompatible with each other. He believes he has the ability to establish himself in any club and live up to his price tag. In his previous life, Feng was a die-hard football fan. He loves football and has always dreamed of playing on the pitch, but due to his limited talent, he can only watch the national team on TV and sigh in despair, or try to regain his pride in FIFA 23. But now, fate has given him this opportunity. 3 months ago, he was transported to the body of a U17 Chinese youth player at Borussia Mönchengladbach in 2015, and successfully activated the elegant system. In short, this system is somewhat misleading. It's not like FIFA 23 where you can improve your skills through training and skill points. Instead, if someone does something that violates the basic ethical standards of a professional player, the elegant system will grant them a reverse curse, increasing their attributes in various aspects. For example, professional athletes are not allowed to smoke, but he somehow manages to improve his stamina by smoking. Professional athletes are not allowed to drink alcohol, but for him, drinking alcohol can actually improve his explosiveness. Professional athletes aren't allowed to go clubbing, but for him, clubbing actually improves his coordination and jumping ability. Professional athletes are not allowed to play video games, but for him, video games actually improve his skills. Although the increase was small each time, and there was a daily limit to the value, Feng persisted in working hard every day during the 3 months he traveled through time, successfully improving his abilities and becoming a starter for Borussia Mönchengladbach U17. He also believes that one day in the future, he will become a world-class striker with perfect attributes in all aspects. This is why Feng has been taking time out of Borussia Mönchengladbach to play defensively during this period. As for why he runs less on the field, it's because the stylish system requires Feng to play stylishly on the field in order to earn stylish points and draw corresponding rewards. Others need to train hard to improve their skills, but when it comes to Feng, the style becomes unusually strange. Feng really didn't want to do this. But this can make you stronger, right? Becoming a world-renowned professional football player has always been Feng's dream. To dominate the green field and achieve the most dazzling success in football is what he wants. Then, in his mind, he said, "Open the personal attribute panel." A panel enveloped in white light, just like in a game, appeared in Feng's mind. Chapter 2, A Volley Shot, Trial with Freiburg. In Feng's mind, his current system data appeared. Name, Feng. Age, 17. Height, 186 centimeters. Shooting ability, 71, long shots, 73, volleys, 70, heading, 68, curve, 75, penalty, 68. Technical abilities, 70, ball control, 74, dribbling, 72, ball control, 70, short passing, 67, long passing, 68. Physical abilities, 68, strength, 65, speed, 71, coordination, 70, reaction, 75, stamina, 59. Overall rating, 69. Current coolness value, 25. Stylishness points can be used to draw player skills. 20 stylishness points for 1 draw, 99 stylishness points for 5 draws, and a black player skill is guaranteed. The skills of the players obtained from the elegance value are divided into 3 levels from high to low: black, gold, and silver. The black-themed football skills are almost all signature moves of world-class players. For example, Beckham's free kick and Zidane's spectacular volley. The method for obtaining coolness points is even more outrageous. Su Feng needs to maintain Berbatov's elegant playing style throughout the match, delivering an outstanding performance with minimal running. After each game, the system will rate his performance on the field and award him a corresponding coolness value based on the game level. The higher the competition level, the higher the elegance score, and the more elegance points you will receive. After more than 3 months of continuous effort, Su Feng finally accumulated 25 dashing points. This was originally a chance to draw a star skill, but Su Feng felt that he had already successfully made a starting position in Borussia Mönchengladbach U17 and had a chance to enter the first team. So I haven't used it yet, intending to save it up so that I'm guaranteed to get a black star player skill in a 5-pull. But now, he's going to try out for a new team. If he doesn't get the head coach's favor because he doesn't run enough, it would be a bad loss. Therefore, Su Feng decided to try his luck with a single draw today. Use your style points to perform a single draw for a star player's skill. Su Feng spoke calmly. Ding! Successfully obtained that stylish star skill. Drawing system rewards, please wait a moment. A silvery white soccer ball silhouette flashed through Su Feng's mind. Interspersed among them were a small number of gold soccer balls and a very small number of black soccer balls. As the speed of the football slowed down, a black football image suddenly appeared in the center of my mind. Ding! Congratulations, host, you have successfully drawn the item. Gain black star skill, Robin van Persie volley. Upon seeing the scene in his mind, Su Feng's eyes lit up immediately. Unexpectedly, my first single pull resulted in a miracle. And it was Van Persie's volley. This skill is, of course, very familiar to Su Feng. This is the signature move of Arsenal captain and number 10 striker Robin van Persie. Robin van Persie, an artist on the pitch, left behind many spectacular and aesthetically pleasing goals throughout his career. His volley shot has become Van Persie's signature skill for defeating opponents, leaving everyone in awe. If he can acquire this ability, combined with Su Feng's superior skills, his dominance on the court will be even stronger. Without a doubt, this made it a certainty that Su Feng would quickly find a new employer. After reviewing the data, Su Feng suppressed his excitement and first used his savings to find a hotel near the club to stay temporarily. Then, he began to use the connections he had built up during this time to find his next team. Previously, based on his outstanding performance in Borussia Mönchengladbach U17, many teams had expressed interest in Su Feng. The first and strongest of them all is Freiburg, which is also located in southern Germany. This is a club that was relegated from the Bundesliga to the 2. Bundesliga in the 2014-15 season, finishing second to last. Although they are currently in poor form and at the bottom of the 2. Bundesliga, they still have a good chance of returning to the Bundesliga and competing in the Europa League in the next few years. After a few phone calls, Su Feng successfully secured a trial opportunity in Freiburg. Having played professionally in Germany for more than half a year, this was not a difficult task for him. After settling in, Su Feng did not rush to rest, but instead went to a local nightclub for a football training session that was different from what most people do. The carefree system provides a 0.1 point bonus every day, and he doesn't want his daily training to be affected by being expelled from Borussia Mönchengladbach U17. 3 days later, in the afternoon. June in Germany is sunny but not hot, making for very comfortable weather. Su Feng, carrying his luggage, arrived at the Freiburg youth team training base, specifically the U17 field. Wearing a Borussia Mönchengladbach jersey, he appeared here and finally met with Dennis, the head coach of Freiburg U17. Hello, Feng. I'm Dennis, the head coach of Freiburg U17. The team's data analyst noticed you before and mentioned you to me. I didn't expect you to be willing to come here for a trial. Dennis walked up to Su Feng warmly and shook hands with him. It's a pity I didn't see you in Freiburg last season when they played against Borussia Mönchengladbach, otherwise I would have gotten to know you better. Dennis truthfully stated that he had never actually seen Su Feng play. He had only seen data about Su Feng from data analysts and some videos online. Su Feng smiled and replied, "It's alright, Mr. Dennis. You'll see my performance today." Dennis nodded, pointed to the side, and said to Su Feng. "Okay, Feng, go to the sidelines to change your shoes and warm up. Today, the team will have an intra-squad practice match specifically targeting you." After Su Feng nodded in response, he walked to the sidelines of the court and began changing his equipment. At this moment, most of the players on the Freiburg U17 youth team also noticed this somewhat conspicuous figure. Yellow race? Wearing Borussia Mönchengladbach jerseys? Is he from the Mönchengladbach Youth Academy? Do people of Asian descent know how to play football? To be fair, there are some pretty good players among the Asian populations of South Korea and Japan. Immediately, murmurs arose among the Freiburg Youth Academy players. They had some doubts about this new player. If it's one of the two countries mentioned above, that's fine. But if people from other countries join the team, it will affect the team's performance and become a drag on the game. At the same time, they were also afraid that he would disrupt the team's balance and compete with them for a starting position. Anyone who was pushed out of the starting lineup would feel terrible. 10 minutes later, Feng followed Freiburg's orderly steps and began his pre-match warm-up activities. During this period, he also sensed the hostility towards him from most of the Freiburg players. However, Feng didn't take any of this seriously. In football, only the strong are respected. He felt that with his superior skills, he could easily defeat a group of 17-year-old kids. Soon, all the pre-match preparations were completed, and head coach Dennis came over with 22 team vests to start assigning the lineup for this trial match, while also introducing Feng. This is Feng, a player from the Borussia Mönchengladbach Youth Academy who came to Freiburg for a trial. He is Chinese. Our intra-squad training match later will be specifically designed to target Feng. As soon as head coach Dennis finished speaking, the players on the sidelines immediately changed their expressions. Can Chinese people play football? Even if they don't know much about China, they all know that China is a notorious football wasteland. For so many years, not a single famous player has emerged from there. This shows just how good the Chinese players are. Dennis approached Feng. According to my previous information, you played as a left forward for Borussia Mönchengladbach. Alright, then you'll be the left winger for the red team this time, and Balk will be moving to the yellow team. After saying that, Balk stepped out from his original group, took the yellow jersey, and stood on the other side. He couldn't help but glance at Feng a few more times. Freiburg commonly uses a 4-3-3 formation in the league, focusing on attacking play in the front, long passes and crosses, strong central defense, and relying mainly on three forwards in their attack, employing a winger tactic. Balk, who plays as the team's left winger, has excellent vision and is good at making runs, but his shooting skills are average and his crossing is even more questionable, often causing the team to falter. However, because there was no better winger than him in Freiburg's U17 team, he has not been dropped from the starting lineup for a long time. But Feng's arrival made him sense a hint of danger. If this newcomer's performance during the trial is exceptionally impressive, he may face the risk of being dropped from the starting lineup. Thinking of this, Balk's eyes grew even colder. Shouldn't we increase the intensity for him now? Let him experience the special attention he receives from his Freiburg predecessors. The subsequent allocation was exceptionally simple. Apart from Feng, all the other players on the red team were key starters for Freiburg U17. The yellow team naturally consisted of substitute players, along with Balk, who was replaced from the starting lineup. The red team will use our usual 4-3-3 formation, maintaining the same strategy as during the game, long passes and crosses, and playing wing tactics. The yellow team is using a 4-5-1 Christmas tree formation. Because their overall strength is relatively weak, they should focus on defense and mainly play counter-attacking football. Balk will play as the team's only center forward. A few minutes later, the lineup for the entire field was finalized. Head coach Dennis gave a few instructions and then had the players take their positions on the field to prepare for the kickoff. Beep. After both teams were ready, head coach Dennis blew the whistle for the first half, and the red team started with a center ball, beginning their first round of attack. Chapter 3: Lazy Positioning. Shocking pass. Despite being the weaker team, the yellow team didn't play timidly. Instead, they quickly followed up and launched a high press, showing no intention of giving way. However, it is still evident that there is still a certain gap in strength between the two sides. Throughout the red team's tight passing rhythm, the ball remained firmly under their control. Even if the yellow team gains possession, before they can pass the ball past midfield, the red team will intercept it again and launch a new attack. Feng remained in the forward position, simply to maintain the formation, making some simple walking runs and waiting for the ball to be passed to his feet. After 2 months of continuous testing, Feng roughly understood that in these ordinary training matches, even if he ran less and performed exceptionally well, earning an S-level rating, he would only receive 1 coolness value. However, Feng also understood the principle of accumulating small gains into large ones. He naturally wouldn't give up any opportunity to gain cool points. In this situation, 10 minutes in, red team midfielder Alger noticed that Feng had an open space, but Feng's slow movement made him hesitant to pass the ball to him. How can you expect a lazy player like that to get an assist? Alger then made a cross pass to the Reds' left winger, Hardy. Hardy's position wasn't good. He was being marked by 2 yellow team defenders, and the center forward was also tightly marked by the opponent, making it difficult for him to receive the ball. Only Feng had the opportunity to dribble into the penalty area. Seeing that the attack was hopeless, Hardy had no choice but to pass the ball back to the red team's defender. Alger, pass the ball to an open player, don't keep passing it to me. If that kid is in a good position, you can try passing it to him too, Hardy patiently explained. Alger, who could hear the sound, slightly pursed his lips. Of course he knew all this, and he wanted to pass it on to Feng, but Feng simply couldn't move. How was I supposed to pass it on? Move around a bit more so I can pass the ball to you. Alger could only helplessly call out in Feng's direction, hoping that he would change his mind. On the sidelines, head coach Dennis, holding a whistle, gradually frowned. He discovered something very important. Why isn't this new trial player running around more actively? Not to mention when he's defending, even when his teammates are attacking, he usually just strolls around unhurriedly. As a striker, the importance of running is self-evident. Where do opportunities come from if you don't take action? If he had started moving earlier, midfielder Alger could have made a through pass and he could have dribbled into the penalty area and taken a shot. With this attitude, what's the point of coming for a trial? Does he not want to come to Freiburg at all? Dennis was puzzled, and without realizing it, his impression of Feng worsened. Just then, the red team's defender once again interrupted the yellow team's attack and took the ball back to his feet. Then, the ball was passed back to midfielder Alger. Seeing that the yellow team was unable to get back to defense in time, Feng keenly sensed this opportunity. He quickly moved forward, raising his hand and shouting for the ball, "Here." After hesitating for a moment, Alger still poked the ball to Feng. Almost 20 minutes into the game, Feng finally touched the football, giving him his first chance to showcase his skills. He dribbled the ball, quickly weaving through the gaps between the yellow team's defenders, and sprinted towards the goal. The yellow team's defender, responsible for guarding him, could only follow behind him, unable to catch up. Suddenly, Feng felt a gust of wind behind him, as if someone was chasing after him. It was Balky, who had been waiting for a good opportunity for Feng to dribble the ball alone, so he could give this Chinese kid a good workout. Therefore, when he saw Feng reach out to ask for help, he quickly crossed half the court to help his teammates catch up. Noticing all this, Feng's lips curled up slightly, and he gently pushed the ball forward, instantly unleashing all his power. Balk, who was originally only half a meter away from him, was suddenly pulled a meter away by him. Balk's face showed a look of shock. His explosive speed was among the top in the youth team, and even the best in Freiburg. Otherwise, he would not have been chosen as the starting winger. But now, he was following right behind Feng, and couldn't even touch his jersey. Damn it! Realizing he could no longer catch up with Feng, Balk quickly signaled to the defenders on the side to come and cover. This was the advantage of playing with 4 defenders, as there were 4 defenders to protect the penalty area. It was originally a defensive counter-attack, but with another teammate from the yellow team running over to help defend Feng, the position of Hardy on the other side became even more open. Feng naturally noticed this opportunity immediately. He skillfully stopped the ball at his feet, and facing the onrushing defender, he gently flicked the ball to the right. Then, he leaned to the right and kicked the ball to the left side with the instep of his left foot. Bang! A crisp and pleasant sound of the ball being touched rang out, and the football instantly lifted off the ground. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, the football flew in a perfect arc from the left side of the field, landing precisely in front of right winger Hardy. Hardy was astonished by the perfect pass. That was a beautifully crafted story. But this wasn't the time to think about that. He immediately chested the ball down, quickly followed up, and easily brought the ball into the penalty area. At this moment, there was only the yellow team's lone goalkeeper in front of him. He aimed at the upper left corner of the goal and unhesitatingly curled a shot. Bang! The football flew up from his feet with a thud. Chapter 4: Tight Defense. A sudden volley. Whoosh! Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the football flew straight into the top corner. The yellow team's goalkeeper made a desperate dive to his right, but he was still unable to save the ball, which flew into the goal. 1-0. The red team, who had been dominating the yellow team, finally scored the first goal of the first half. Hardy, who had just scored, excitedly ran over from the right side of the field, his joy at successfully breaking the deadlock written all over his face, and excitedly hugged Feng. "Your name is Feng, right? That pass was absolutely fantastic. With that brilliant pass, I'm confident you'll pass the trial and join our team." Feng patted Hardy on the back and politely replied, "Thank you. Your shot just now was also very impressive." Meanwhile, on the sidelines, Freiburg's head coach, Dennis, who was watching the game from the bench, touched his nose in disbelief. He couldn't believe that the high-quality, curved pass he had just made was actually made by this young Chinese player who had come for a trial. As an observer, watching the game from a third-person perspective, he naturally saw clearly Feng's footwork just now, controlling the ball, dribbling past opponents, cutting inside and making a long pass, which was executed flawlessly. That's incredibly calm. But this is completely inconsistent with Feng's performance on the field just now. "Dennis, I think we've struck gold this time." The assistant coach looked at Feng in the crowd and couldn't help but say excitedly. "We can't jump to conclusions so quickly," Dennis said with a complicated expression. "Besides that decent cross, did he have any other outstanding performances on the field just now? Look at his passive performance on the field just now. Who knows if he just made that kick in a moment of crisis?" The assistant coach immediately retorted, "But look how calm he is while celebrating, he's clearly very confident in his pass." Dennis shook his head. "There's still some time before the game ends, let's see." This play lessened Dennis's opinion of Feng, but he still held his own view and wanted to see what other amazing performances Feng would have besides passing in the upcoming game. After speaking, Dennis turned his attention back to the arena and continued watching the game. On the field at that moment, Balk, who had just suffered a great humiliation, was glaring angrily at the center-back of the yellow team who had defended Feng. In his view, although he did not catch up with Feng, it was because the center-back failed to contain Feng in time that Feng made such a high-quality pass, making him the backdrop. "Balk, why are you staring at me? Is it all my fault that the opponent scored this time?" The yellow team center-back couldn't help but speak up when he saw Balk's unfriendly gaze. Balk retorted sharply, "Isn't that right? If I hadn't covered in time, that kid would have been one-on-one with the goalkeeper. As for you, just do your job. You don't think you're better than me on defense, do you?" Balk snorted coldly, too lazy to continue arguing with the yellow team center-back, and turned to run towards the front to prepare for restarting the game. He secretly resolved to get his revenge in the upcoming matches. The game quickly resumed. After the red team center-forward passed the ball to right winger Hardy, he passed it to midfielder Alger and instructed him, "That Chinese kid has good technique. Pass the ball to him more often and give him more opportunities to perform." On the other side, the yellow team's goal did not break down their mental defenses, instead, it spurred them on, leading to even more intense pressing in defense. Therefore, after several passes, the red team failed to bring the ball into the attacking third, and the ball remained under the control of the red team's midfield. When the game reached the 40th minute, the red team's left-back finally found an opportunity and passed the ball to Feng, who was far away in the heart of the yellow team's territory. The moment Feng received the ball, the yellow team players instantly recalled the moment the goal was scored. How could he get past several center-backs in a row and still deliver such a high-quality pass? This time, they will not allow Feng to have another chance to dribble close to the penalty area and repeat the same mistake. First of all, the yellow team's left-back immediately moved forward to mark Feng closely. He was very experienced, keeping his center of gravity low and not pressing forward, but simply blocking Feng's breakthrough route. Behind him, there were two more center-backs covering for him. Even the yellow team's midfielders moved over to prevent Su Feng from crossing the ball again. Faced with such close monitoring, the members of the yellow team were no longer so worried. No matter how good Su Feng's technique is, the best he can do is dribble past the fullback and cross the ball. Did he intend to bring the ball over, get past them, and then make a solo run into the penalty area to shoot? That's absolutely impossible. That defensive play on the right flank was a bit too aggressive, which allowed this kid to seize the opportunity and show off. If you defend the flanks well, you can definitely stop them. This is not a very threatening position. But just as we were thinking, Su Feng's footwork had already begun. Faced with such tight defense, he naturally wouldn't be foolish enough to dribble forward and recklessly show off his skills. Bang! Bang! Several very coherent sounds rang out as Su Feng skillfully rode his bicycle towards the center. The yellow team's fullback, thinking Su Feng was about to cut inside, hurriedly moved his feet, trying to keep up with his movements. Just as he shifted his weight and lost his footing, Su Feng suddenly stopped and delivered a backheel pass, steadily sending the ball to the midfielder behind him. Then he quickly bypassed the yellow team's fullback and cut into the gap in midfield. Here. Su Feng raised his right hand, asking for the ball again. After receiving the ball, the attacking midfielder of the red team glanced around the field and saw Su Feng making a run into midfield to ask for the ball. Alger next to him seemed to have a better long-range shooting opportunity, but this was, after all, a trial match for this Chinese boy. After thinking for a while, he decided to give Su Feng a chance and immediately started kicking. Bang! A high cross was sent directly towards Su Feng's position. Su Feng looked up at the arc of the football and judged its landing point. He was fortunate that the midfielder had relatively good footwork skills, and the cross was of fairly good quality. Oh no! Quickly block his shooting route. One of the yellow team's centre-backs saw Su Feng's intention to shoot and immediately called for another centre-back to come and defend together. He felt that if they were just a little faster, they could block Su Feng's shooting route before he could control the ball. But at that moment, the football had already reached Su Feng. To everyone's surprise, Su Feng didn't intend to stop the ball. Instead, he swung his left leg, leaned his body slightly to the right, and sent the ball flying directly in front of him. Bang! Su Feng's outside of the foot strike landed squarely on the bottom center of the ball, unleashing a high-quality volley that hurtled directly toward the yellow team's goal. Chapter 5, A Brace. The head coach's concerns. The football soared into the air, and everyone on the field stood on tiptoe, watching the trajectory of the ball with great anticipation. Even head coach Dennis, who was on the bench, couldn't help but look over. Under everyone's expectant gaze, the football flew from Su Feng's feet, heading straight for the goal with unstoppable momentum. The ball was perfectly controlled, thanks to Su Feng's superior ball control. The ball struck the goal at the ideal height. Whoosh! Before the yellow team's goalkeeper could make a save, the ball went into the net. Goal! 2 o'clock. Su Feng remained largely unmoved, merely clenching his fist and waving it a few times before turning and running towards the midfield. Everyone else was stunned and stood there dumbfounded. The players on the red team even forgot to celebrate their goal, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. This young Chinese player, the moment he receives the ball, can dribble forward and calmly bring it into the penalty area. Even in a critical moment, he remains composed, passing the ball back and then unleashing a powerful volley. That's insane. Is this the kind of performance a 17-year-old U17 youth player should be putting up? Even if you put a first-team striker in this position, they wouldn't perform like this, would they? Moreover, it's highly likely that he's not as technically skilled as Su Feng. Immediately, all the players on the field changed their attitude towards Su Feng. Good shot, bro. That's fantastic. Your technique is the best I've ever seen in youth training. Was he a key player for Borussia Mönchengladbach before? He's that good. I feel like we can loan them out to some lower-level leagues to gain experience. They're not even in the same league as us. Many of the red team players ran over and started chatting with Su Feng, and even gave Lu Mingfeng a high five in celebration. They genuinely admired Su Feng. That's how strong players are revered on the football field. Even though the player was acting a bit strangely on the field, they were even a little puzzled. However, this did not prevent Feng from achieving an excellent record of 1 assist and 1 goal on the field. The yellow team striker, Bulk, stood there with a dissatisfied expression, waiting for his teammates to return to their positions. Is it really that hard to stand firm in your position? It's one thing for him to get past the mid lane, but why let him break in on the flanks? With so many people standing in front of the goal, can't they even block his shooting route? When the training match began, Bulk showed hostility towards the newcomer who came for the trial. In an effort to increase the intensity for him, he even tracked back from the front to defend, but unfortunately, he also became someone else's backdrop. He felt humiliated and angry that his own team's defense had been completely outmatched by that kid. Unable to vent his anger through other means, he could only take it out on his teammates. His complaint caused an uproar among the yellow team's defense. Mocking our poor defense? You can play guard. You're not even as fast as the others, you were just left several meters behind, and now you have the nerve to come and complain about us. For a moment, the yellow team's defensive teammates all started attacking Bulk. Bulk quickly blushed. He gritted his teeth, turned around, and stared at Feng, feeling extremely angry. Fuck, where did this kid come from? Hopefully, head coach Dennis will criticize his attitude on the field and prevent him from joining the team. Bulk began to pray in his heart. The game then restarted. After witnessing Feng's several brilliant performances, the yellow team's defense also focused their defensive efforts on him. The two defenders kept him close, not giving him any chance to receive the ball. The other players also ran around the field with all their might, trying their best to make every defensive play. On the contrary, the two team members who were wearing protective gear moved very little, just like taking a walk in the park. Beep. Beep. Soon, the time came to 45 minutes, and head coach Dennis blew the whistle to end the first half. The players left the field to rest, sitting in a circle to hydrate and stretch. After a 10-minute break, both teams returned to the field to begin the second half. Feng continued to fully utilize his individual technical skills to his advantage on the field. He is very lazy. If the team doesn't develop an attack on the left flank, he will even stand still and look detached from everyone else on the field. But as soon as the ball reaches him, he leaps across the field with incredible flair, looking like he's dancing a samba on the pitch. In this situation, it was the 80th minute of the match. With his excellent technical skills and dribbling ability, Feng completed a Marseille turn and successfully broke into the penalty area again, tearing a hole in the yellow team's defense. Bang! Another curling shot that went straight into the top corner. Feng once again put the ball into the yellow team's net. Whoosh! Goal! 3-0. Feng scored twice in this trial match. So beautiful. Feng, your skills are definitely at the level of a first-team player. The red team members all ran over to celebrate Feng's goal. At this moment, they felt that Feng's entry into Freiburg U17 was a foregone conclusion. Having such a talented player join the team is definitely something to be happy about. In the game, thanks to Feng's excellent individual ability, the team's performance can be improved a lot, and the team's overall attention will also increase. In that case, their chances of being selected by the first team would be much greater. On the bench, head coach Dennis nodded respectfully, his lips pursed, clearly impressed by Feng's skill. Needless to say, his assistant coach was now seeing Feng as a shining new star in the future of football. This is simply unbelievable. This kid's ability is practically at the level to join Freiburg's first team and compete in the 2. Bundesliga. Dennis, you have to sign him, or I think you'll regret it for the rest of your life. After hearing what the assistant coach said, head coach Dennis began to hesitate. The performance of that Chinese boy just now truly amazed him. However, the football world is never short of talented young players, so why should this kid be given a chance to perform? Judging from his movement on the field, his physical fitness is clearly too weak. He's about 1.85 meters tall and physically strong, so his physical strength shouldn't be too bad, but poor stamina means he can't play professional matches. If he plays like this, he might still have a chance to perform in the youth team, but would the first team really want a player like him? When defending, the team is completely outnumbered, making it impossible to implement the coach's tactics and strategies. Chapter 6, Signing the Contract and Joining Freiburg U17. Are you worried about his physical fitness? The assistant coach noticed head coach Dennis's concerns, patted him on the shoulder, and reassured him, "Dennis, have you forgotten what we do? We are coaches, aren't we here to correct some of the players' bad habits and instill modern football concepts and tactics in them? I think this kid has Berbatov's talent. Why can't we supervise him closely, train him hard, and make him the next Cristiano Ronaldo?" Upon hearing this, Dennis's eyes lit up, and he began to imagine his future plans. Just imagine how famous we would be in the world of football if we turned this kid into the next generation of stars. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. After listening to the assistant coach's words, Dennis's furrowed brows relaxed slightly. That seems to make sense. This is indeed a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Dennis began to imagine future scenarios in his mind. In 2015, Chinese youngster Feng faced setbacks in Germany due to his lack of physical fitness. His professional career was almost over after being dismissed by Borussia Mönchengladbach. However, he met a benefactor in his life. His name is Dennis. The more Dennis thought about it, the more a smile crept onto his lips, which was somewhat contrary to his usual demeanor. Cough, cough, cough. Dennis abandoned his daydreaming and his expression turned serious again. But the seed of that fantasy had already taken root and sprouted deep in his mind. He was determined to train this young Chinese player into an all-around genius. Soon, the 90 minutes were up. Beep. 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 Dennis blew the final whistle. On the field, Feng celebrated the victory with the red team members as they walked towards the bench. At the same time, a mechanical voice echoed in his mind. Ding! Congratulations, host, on winning this competition. Running distance, 38:45 m, rating, S. 1 cool point. Current coolness value, 6. As Feng expected, he received an S-level rating from the system in this training match, but only gained 1 point of elegance value. He achieved an excellent record of 2 goals and 1 assist. He should be able to win the favor of Freiburg U17 head coach Dennis. Making it into the youth team is just one of his small goals. He won't stop here. His ultimate goal is to use this as a springboard to get noticed by the first-team coach as soon as possible and then join the first team. Playing in the German second division is a very good start to a professional football career. He was confident he could get there very soon. To become a true professional player and fulfill my dream from my past life. It was 4 p.m. that day. After finishing the match, Feng took a shower in the team's shower room, dried himself off, and then went to the U17 coach's office. In the match just now, Feng completely dominated the yellow team, which consisted of substitute players. 2 goals and 1 assist is an absolutely amazing performance for a trial player who is not familiar with the team. So after the game, head coach Dennis asked Feng to come to his office later to discuss the signing. Feng himself was not too surprised by this result. After all, with his rating of nearly 70, he's more than capable of dominating a bunch of 17-year-old kids in the youth training team. The next step is to stand out in the youth training team and try to get the attention of Freiburg's first-team coach as soon as possible. He was promoted to the first team to compete in the actual German second division. Before long, Feng arrived at the door of the U17 office, pushed the door open, and went inside. What came into view was the blonde, blue-eyed assistant coach who had been standing on the sidelines. Head coach Dennis was sitting in an office chair at the back. "Hello Mr. Feng. I am Steven, the team's assistant coach." Assistant coach Steven stepped forward, smiled, extended his right hand to shake hands with Feng, and then led him to sit down at the desk. Head coach Dennis nodded, shook hands with Feng in a gentlemanly manner, and then spread his hands and said, "Feng, I watched the match just now, and your performance was outstanding. Freiburg U17 would be happy to offer you a youth training contract. I wonder if you would be interested in signing it now." Steven, fearing that Feng might still have reservations, stood beside him and helped explain, "Joining us not only gives you the opportunity to train in at least 1 youth team league match a week, but also the chance to be noticed by the first-team coach and play in the German second division. I believe you have a great passion for football and you certainly won't miss this opportunity." After hearing these words, Feng felt that this assistant coach understood his thoughts very well, or rather, understood the thoughts of every person who aspires to become a professional player. Joining a team, becoming a professional player, and giving his all on the green field, isn't that exactly what he wants? Feng nodded and replied with a smile, "Okay, I'd be happy to. Let's take a look at the details of the contract." Good. Dennis took out a pre-prepared contract from his office drawer with satisfaction and placed it in front of Feng. This contract is not a professional contract, but a formal employment contract. According to the regulations of the German Football League, young players participating in youth training usually sign contracts with clubs that are not professional contracts, but rather temporary contracts. A club will only offer a player a professional contract when the player turns 18 or joins the first team. Although it's just a signed contract, its contents are virtually identical to those of a professional contract. Considering your excellent performance just now, the club is willing to offer you a weekly wage of €300. Dennis held up a number on his finger as he spoke. This is only your first contract, and it's already a pretty good salary. Of course, this also takes into account your starting position at Borussia Mönchengladbach. Feng nodded in agreement and did not dwell on the matter for long. His weekly wage of €300 is enough to cover his daily expenses, and he firmly believes that with his ability, he can achieve good results in Freiburg U17 and earn a higher salary. Other matters are probably similar to what you experienced in Borussia Mönchengladbach, so there shouldn't be any major problems. Dennis's expression turned slightly somber as he spoke about the topic. However, I have to say something up front. This is a 2-year contract with a buyout clause of €1 million. If you cannot secure a place in the first team within 2 years, you will leave Freiburg. Can you accept this penalty for breach of contract? Chapter 7, Making Friends with Alger, and the First Meal in Freiburg. No problem, Feng nodded. A €1 million penalty is not a lot. As for the 2-year contract term, that was also under his consideration. He felt that he wouldn't even need 2 years to have the opportunity to join the first team and compete in the German second division. Great. Feng, if there are no problems, let's sign the contract now. Assistant coach Steven excitedly handed a pen to Feng. Thanks. Feng took the pen, glanced at the contents of the contract, and after confirming that there were no problems, signed his name on the contract. Head coach, I wonder if the club could prepay me a week's salary. I don't have much money left at Borussia Mönchengladbach, Feng said, scratching his head somewhat embarrassed. He had spent all the money he had saved up in the past few days at nightclubs. In order to ensure that he could continue to go to nightclubs for special training during the next period of time, he had to ask the club to pay him a salary in advance. Dennis nodded without hesitation and replied, no problem. Steven, take Feng to the finance department to collect his weekly salary, then take him to the player's dormitory and show him around the club. Okay, Steven readily agreed. He always has an inexhaustible passion for outstanding players. Feng, it's a pleasure working with you. I'm sure you'll find that joining Freiburg was a great choice in the future. Yes, Mr. Dennis, it's a pleasure doing business with you. Feng took the initiative to extend his hand and shake hands with the two coaches. And so the simple signing ceremony came to an end. Afterwards, Steven took Feng to the finance department of the training building to collect his salary of €300, and then took him to the players' dormitory. Freiburg, a long-established German club, has its U17 youth training division located in the southern part of Freiburg. The training grounds include 2 standard football fields as well as other smaller training areas for the players. Steven led Feng to the southernmost edge of the football field and pointed, explaining, Feng, this is the team's daily training ground. The players need to assemble at 8:30 every morning to begin training. The building behind is the players' dormitory. Captain Alger is still living alone for the time being, so you can stay with him for now. Feng nodded and agreed. Placing him with Captain Alger was definitely a decision made by head coach Dennis. In this way, Feng can quickly get to know Captain Alger and thus become familiar with the whole team. Furthermore, Captain Alger plays in a perfect midfield position, allowing for closer coordination with the forwards on the field, making this move a win-win situation. Steven led the way and finally stopped outside room 203 on the second floor. He knocked on the door, and after a short while, Alger opened the door from the inside. Coach Steven, is there something you need? Alger, there's an empty spot in your room. The head coach has decided to let you share a room with Feng. Is there a problem? Upon hearing that he could live with Su Feng, Alger's face immediately lit up with an excited smile. Su Feng's performance in the training match today shocked everyone. The team members all believe that Su Feng will be a new starting player for Freiburg U17 in the future. Alger himself is a warm and hospitable Scandinavian, and he naturally felt that living with such a key player on the team and building a good relationship would be extremely beneficial to his future development. Of course, no problem. I'd be thrilled to be living with such talented teammates here. Alger spoke from the bottom of his heart, and at the same time extended his right hand to shake hands warmly with Su Feng. Steven laughed and said, "All right, the new team member is in your hands now." After Alger agreed, Steven said goodbye to the two and left. As the assistant coach with the most say in the team, there were still many things left for him to handle. Alger warmly took the luggage from Su Feng, went inside to help him unpack, and also told him about some of the team's unique rules. By the time we finished cleaning up, it was already 6 o'clock in the evening. Alger insisted on helping Su Feng with everything, and he even sweated more than Su Feng did. He handed Su Feng a tissue and said with a smile, "Feng, you just joined the team today. As the team captain, I feel it's my duty to treat you to a meal so you can experience the delicious food of Freiburg." Generally, youth training players are not specifically responsible for their diet by assistant coaches, so the players have relatively free choices regarding their meals. It is not unusual for them to eat out if they do not wish to eat in the club canteen. Su Feng was new to the club and unfamiliar with the surrounding area, not even knowing where the nearby nightclubs were. Therefore, he felt it was very necessary to go out for a meal with Alger and get to know the surrounding area. "Yes, Captain." Su Feng nodded in agreement. After tidying up briefly, the two headed out of the room. Alger was like a chatterbox, his mouth never stopped, and he started talking again as soon as he left the room. "Wind, Hardy is my best friend on the team. Let's invite him to the dinner party too. I believe that in the future, you and he will definitely become the strongest forward line in Freiburg U17. Su Feng nodded in agreement, as getting to know the team's key players was also a very necessary thing. Seeing that Su Feng had agreed, Alger knocked on the door of room 202 next door. Hardy is also temporarily living in a room by himself, which can be considered as a special consideration given by the club to the team's key players. At that moment, Hardy had just finished showering in his dormitory and opened the door while drying himself off. "Hey bro, what's up?" Alger asked, puzzled. Alger replied with a smile, "No, I just wanted to invite you out for a meal." A hint of hesitation crossed Hardy's face. After thinking for a moment, he declined, saying, "I have to go to the stadium to train tonight. Next week's game is very important for the club, but I still haven't been doing well with my set pieces. I can't let the team down." Hardy is known for his diligence within the team. Every day after dinner, he would go to the court for extra practice. After the training match just ended, the team had already announced an early rest, but he still trained alone on the field for more than an hour, which is why he only just returned to the dormitory to take a shower now. Alger walked into the room, put his arm around Su Feng's shoulder, and pointed to Su Feng outside the door, saying, "Feng just joined the team today, and I'm going to take him to try the food in Freiburg. You don't need to train today, come with me." Upon hearing that it was a dinner invitation for Su Feng, Hardy's expression changed, and he began to ponder. A player with such exceptional talent as Su Feng has an unlimited future. It would be ideal to build a good relationship with him during his youth training period. It doesn't seem like a big deal to miss a day of extra training for this. After making his decision, Hardy lightly punched Alger in the chest with his fist and said, "Okay, wait for me a moment, I'll go in and change my clothes and then I'll be right back." Chapter 8 Nightclub Training, the late team rookie. After changing his clothes, Hardy left the Freiburg club's youth training base with Alger and Su Feng. The Freiburg youth training base is located in the southern suburbs of Freiburg, and not far to the north is a bustling commercial street. As a native German, Alger joined Freiburg's youth academy very early and is very familiar with the surrounding environment. On his recommendation, the three of them went to a sauerkraut and pork trotter shop on the commercial street, which had a strong German local flavor. During a meal, these three future mainstays of the U17 team successfully became friends and started calling each other brothers. After finishing his meal, Alger paid the bill first, then hailed a taxi and headed straight back to the club. Sitting in the back row, Feng could tell from Alger's posture that he was going straight back to the club. He finally made it to the commercial street. How can I go back before I've completed my special training? Thinking of this, Feng scratched his head and asked softly, Captain, are we going to go straight back? Alger, who was sitting in the passenger seat and insisted on paying the fare, turned to Feng and said, Yeah, Feng, is there anything else you need to do? Tell us now, and we'll take care of it for you in a bit. I'm thinking of going to the nightclubs on this shopping street since there's no match tomorrow, Feng said. Upon hearing Feng's words, Alger and Hardy both looked over in surprise. Professional athletes are not allowed to go to nightclubs. Nightclubs often present numerous temptations and risks, which can lead players to become addicted, neglect their training, and have a significant impact on their careers. In that instant, they seemed to understand why Feng's physical abilities were so poor. His body was completely hollowed out by alcohol and sex. Feng, going to nightclubs will have a significant impact on your future career path. Maybe you shouldn't go anymore. Sitting next to Feng, Hardy also spoke with a worried expression. He genuinely admired Feng as a brother and therefore didn't want to see him fall into depravity. Don't worry, I won't stay overnight at the nightclub. I'll just be back a little late. I'll definitely be at training tomorrow. Feng could tell that the two of them strictly adhered to the professional ethics of players, and would not easily go to nightclubs, nor did he intend to force them to go with him. After all, he can improve his football skills by going to nightclubs to drink. But the two of them still have to sweat it out on the green field and train constantly. Then, Feng stopped the driver and got out of the car. Smack! As soon as he closed the car door, Feng habitually lit a cigarette and waved goodbye to the two people in the car. He even smokes. Hardy's eyes widened in shock when he saw Feng light a cigarette. The taxi then started moving. Alger shook his head and said to Hardy, These habits of Feng's are having a huge impact on his future career. We must find an opportunity to help Feng get rid of these bad habits. That's right. In that case, when will his physical fitness reach the required level? We can't just watch our brother fall into this state. Hardy spoke with a determined look in his eyes, already formulating a plan in his mind. He didn't want Feng, a player with outstanding football talent, to fall into depravity. After getting off the bus, Feng hadn't walked far down the commercial street when he discovered a nightclub. Several blonde, blue-eyed European beauties stood at the entrance of the nightclub, their long golden hair framing their foreheads like a western sunset. Feng walked into the nightclub. This nightclub has a great atmosphere. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and alcohol, and the music was blasting at full volume, almost deafening. The dazzling lights illuminated the goblets overflowing with Lafite, and the ambiguous hues amidst the clinking of glasses eroded the numbed hearts of the people. Feng chose a corner in the nightclub, sat down, and ordered an ice-cold beer from the waiter. He wasn't particularly fond of drinking to begin with. But now, with the system's support, he has gradually come to love the dazzling and colorful world, and the feeling of slowly sinking into it. Host detected drinking 200 milliliters of beer, burst plus 0.002. As the crisp mechanical sound in his mind ended, a satisfied smile spread across Feng's face. This training method. This is so awesome. Immediately afterwards, Feng opened another bottle of ice-cold beer on the table and continued training. Meanwhile, on the pitch at the Freiburg U17 training ground, Hardy, back at the club, was training free kicks all by himself. He repeatedly kicked the ball, retrieved the ball, and placed the ball. The next day. At 6 o'clock in the morning, Freiburg was bathed in clear blue skies. A ray of sunlight shone brightly on the green field, complementing Hardy's jogging. Head coach Dennis and assistant coach Steven both have the habit of waking up early. After having breakfast in the club's canteen, the two arrived at the training ground early to wait for the players to arrive. Of course, every morning when the two arrived at the club, they would see Hardy practicing on the pitch. That's why Dennis admires him. This time, however, their conversation wasn't about Hardy, but about Feng, who had just joined the team yesterday. Steven, take the wind with you this morning for a full physical exam. If I'm not mistaken, this kid must be in poor physical condition, which is why he's not actively moving around on the field. If that's the case, we'll need to shift our focus in his training a bit more in the future. At 7:30, Dennis was already standing on the sidelines of the pitch, discussing the day's tasks with assistant coach Steven. Steven nodded and replied, "Yes, Mr. Dennis, I think so too. Once his physical fitness is improved, he will be the sharpest blade on Freiburg's front line." Dennis listened to Steven's words, lit a cigarette, and turned to look at the entrance of the football field, hoping to find Feng among the players entering the field. However, when most of the players had already arrived. It's already 7:50. Assistant coach Steven still couldn't find Feng in the crowd, and he couldn't help but wonder, so he walked over to Alger and asked. "Alger, why hasn't the wind come yet? Doesn't he know that training starts at 8? Alger scratched his head awkwardly. He had called Feng when he went out for breakfast. He only left the dormitory after Feng responded to him. But why hasn't Feng arrived at the training ground yet? Are you still eating? Upon seeing this, Alger quickly explained, "When I left, Feng had just gotten up to go to the cafeteria for lunch. He might not be familiar with the layout of the cafeteria, so he's probably still eating right now." Dennis stubbed out his cigarette, walked over to Dennis's side, and heard Alger's explanation. But is this explanation a valid reason for being late for training? Dennis wouldn't buy into such a lame excuse. Then, he frowned and spoke to Alger in a slightly angry tone. "Didn't you show Feng around the club yesterday? Being late for training on the first day, is this the attitude a new player should have? Even if he skips breakfast, he should still be on the pitch on time." Assistant coach Steven still admires Feng, a talented player. He thinks Feng might have been late because he wasn't familiar with the club yet. So he patted Dennis on the shoulder and said with a smile. "Dude, don't get so angry so early in the morning." After he finished speaking, he turned to Alger and gave him instructions. "Alger, let's not wait for the wind. Why don't you take the team to the court for a 5-lap jog to warm up?" Chapter 9 Arrogance and the Bet with the Head Coach. "Okay, coach." After agreeing, Alger turned back to the team and led the players in a warm-up jog. "Dude, why are you so serious?" After all, it was only his first day with the team, so it's understandable that some special circumstances might arise. "Isn't it unnecessary to get so angry?" Steven couldn't help but tease with a laugh. Dennis shook his head, sighed, and replied, "Shouldn't I make a good impression on my first day with the team? This is a complete disregard for me, the head coach." Today he was also thinking of conducting a physical examination on Feng, and then prescribing the right medicine to train him into an all-around striker. He will be transferred to Freiburg's first team in the future and become a key player for the team. However, if he has this kind of professional attitude, he might not even get a chance to play in the German U17 championship next week. Standing nearby, Steven quickly comforted head coach Dennis. He certainly didn't want the team to lose a promising player because of this. The two stood on the green field and chatted for more than an hour. The other team members had already started their daily training, but Feng was still nowhere to be seen. Dennis, unable to contain his anger, pointed at the players' dormitory and shouted, "Steven, what's going on with the wind? Have another teaching assistant bring him to me right now. I want to know what he did all morning instead of training." Just as Dennis was getting angry and embarrassed, Steven finally saw a dark-haired boy wearing a Freiburg jersey at the entrance to the football field. "Buddy, no need to send anyone, the wind seems to be picking up." Following his gaze, Dennis also spotted Feng on the green field. "When the wind blows, control your temper and don't let the players think that you, the head coach, have a strange temper." Steven, who had served as Dennis's second-in-command for 5 or 6 years, knew his temperament well and quickly reminded him from the side. Dennis snorted coldly, said nothing, and slowly watched Feng walk over from the green field. Seeing Feng's unhurried attitude, Dennis couldn't help but complain, "He's not even willing to run a few steps if he's late." A minute later, Feng finally arrived in front of the two coaches. But at the same time, there was a breeze carrying a strong smell of alcohol. Feng said with a slightly apologetic expression, "I'm sorry, coach. I overslept on the first day of training." Dennis, who had been able to suppress his anger after being persuaded by Steven, finally couldn't hold back and exploded after smelling the alcohol on Feng. "Feng, you're late on the first day of training. What kind of professional attitude is that? Dennis showed him his wristwatch, pointing the hands at the time. Do you know what time it is? 9 o'clock. The other team members have been training for over an hour, and you're only just arriving. Dennis turned his gaze away from his watch and instead focused on Su Feng's face, which had just sobered up from his drunken stupor. Furthermore, as a professional player, don't you know that players shouldn't drink alcohol? Dennis rebuked him coldly, his voice filled with oppressive force. Even Alger, the most senior captain in the youth training team, would probably be extremely nervous in this situation. Su Feng smiled gently. Coach, first of all, I drank alcohol last night, but it was in my private time, so according to the contract, it does not constitute a breach of contract. So at most, I'm just late for daily training. Now it was Dennis's turn to be dumbfounded. What kind of player can say such grand and righteous things to the head coach? Was he just late for routine training? Seeing that Dennis's anger had not subsided, Su Feng quickly changed the subject and continued. Moreover, the reason I drank last night was to celebrate my successful joining the excellent Freiburg team. I believe Mr. Dennis won't be angry about this. Stephen breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing this. If Su Feng were also stubborn, he wouldn't be able to stop Dennis when he got angry. Dennis stared into Su Feng's eyes for a few seconds, then seemed to laugh in exasperation. Kid, what makes you think you can think like that when you're just starting out on the team? Aren't you afraid that you won't even have a chance to play? Su Feng continued in fluent German, I believe you wouldn't do something so foolish. You know, I'm very good at scoring goals. Dennis's angry expression returned. Do you think the U17 championship is as simple as a training match? It's the real battlefield. If you train more seriously and live a regular life, I can indeed consider putting you in the starting lineup and giving you consistent playing time. But I was very disappointed with your performance today. Su Feng smiled faintly. Dennis using self-manipulation on himself. He clearly wants to join the team to change his current situation, but he's still negotiating with me. How about we make a bet? I'm sure I'll score a goal next time I play. Dennis sneered, shrugged, and frowned as he spoke. What a boastful tone. Even Messi and Ronaldo can't guarantee that they will score in every game. Dennis narrowed his eyes and couldn't help but chuckle. Okay, I'll bet with you. If you can guarantee a goal, I'll pretend that you were late for training today never happened. If you don't do that, then get rid of all your bad habits. Otherwise, you can leave the team on your own. Su Feng nodded and left gracefully. He walked over to Alger and joined the team's daily training. Dennis was left completely bewildered. Buddy, don't act impulsively. Kids this age are just naturally arrogant. He'll get used to things after a few seasons. I believe he'll be a key player for Freiburg's first team in the future. Seeing that the argument between the two had ended, Stephen quickly stepped in to protect Dennis's relationship, trying his best not to let the team lose such a talented player. Dennis shook his head, gave Stephen a disdainful smile, and said, he doesn't even care how much playing time he gets. Does he really think he can score goals just by coming on the field? Chapter 10 Physical Training, Actor Su Feng. The contracts signed by youth training players do not include playing time. In other words, when Su Feng enters the game and how long he plays are all decided by head coach Dennis alone. When the team has a large lead, bring Su Feng on in the last few minutes. Does this count as an appearance? Even if Su Feng can't even touch the ball, he still gets on the field. Dennis dared to make this bet with Su Feng because he had already thought of a plan. He wanted to use this opportunity to suppress Su Feng's brilliance. To mold him into a player that I'm satisfied with. Upon seeing Su Feng return to the team, Alger immediately went to Su Feng's side and did some simple passing drills with him. Feng, when I left, didn't you say you were going to get up right away? Why are you only arriving now? Hearing Alger's concern made Su Feng feel from the bottom of his heart that he was a brother worth getting to know better. He smiled slightly and replied to Alger. I fell asleep again without realizing it. Alger sighed and comforted him, fortunately, this is only your first time. The head coach shouldn't hold a grudge about it. In order for you to be able to start in the future, please don't be late for training anymore. Su Feng nodded, but inadvertently passed the ball away, so he quickly ran over to retrieve it. Hearing this, Balk, who was training to the left of the two, couldn't help but feel a little smug. He thought that Su Feng, with such strong abilities, must be a disciplined maniac like Hardy. But his current performance has dispelled all his original worries. What's the use of having great talent if you don't even put your heart into daily training? I'm quite talented too, and if I work hard, I can definitely secure a starting position. Thinking this, Balk quickened his pace even further. After the morning training session, the team members went to the club's cafeteria for lunch. Steven sat down next to Su Feng and, after he finished eating, took him to have a full physical examination. After the test, Su Feng returned to the team and began specialized training for his position in the afternoon. Steven, holding Su Feng's test report, went to the dressing room on the sidelines of the football field to find head coach Dennis. "Dennis, this is really puzzling." Steven sat down in front of Dennis and said with a surprised look. "That kid was different from what we both guessed. His physical fitness test wasn't too bad, he scored around 75 points. As he spoke, Steven handed the test report to Dennis. A healthy professional football player with a physical fitness score of 70 can easily run 10,000 meters on the field. Dennis took the report and began to read it. But the more he looked, the more ashen his face became, as if he had seen a ghost. After reviewing the report, Dennis placed it on the table, took out a cigarette, and lit it. After slowly exhaling a puff of smoke, he looked at Steven with a shocked expression and said, "This is unbelievable. This kid has such good stamina, why isn't he active and running around on the field?" Steven scratched his head, seemingly unwilling to voice his guess. "The only explanation I think makes sense is that he's a bit lazy." Upon hearing Steven's words, Dennis stopped smoking and shoved the cigarette into the ashtray. "Lazy, huh? Then I'll let him get more training." After Dennis finished speaking, he got up and left the lounge. 4:30 p.m. The Freiburg U17 youth team unusually stopped training, and all the members sat cross-legged with their head coach on the sidelines of the green field, watching a black-haired boy who was doing physical training on the track. "Boss, this is the 22nd lap already. Should we let him stop and rest for a bit?" Hardy leaned close to Dennis and said with some concern. On the other hand, Dennis had a dark expression on his face and couldn't say a word. The other Freiburg U17 players around couldn't help but sigh when they saw Su Feng running, a completely different person from the one on the field. "My God, I never imagined this was the true level of the wind. I thought he wasn't running around much on the field because of his lack of stamina, but now it seems that his stamina is even better than mine. Why doesn't Kufeng want to run on the field? If the wind moved like this on the field, coupled with his excellent skills, he could definitely be a key player in Freiburg's first team." After watching for a while, Dennis saw that Su Feng was not exhausted yet, and couldn't help but shout loudly, "I really didn't expect you to have such good stamina. But why did they perform so poorly on the field? Despite possessing excellent physical abilities, his running statistics are even worse than those of U12 youth training players. I really don't know where you put your face." Steven nudged Dennis's arm, signaling him not to speak so harshly. "As you can see, Feng's physical fitness is quite good. Instead of having him do physical training here, we should have a good discussion about how to communicate with him so that he can keep up with the pace of the game and run actively." Dennis stood up, complaining with a hint of exasperation, why doesn't he use his amazing physical abilities? Does he really want to become the next Berbatov? Human desires are never satisfied. When you have a half-finished Messi, you'll definitely want to make him the real Messi, or even the Messi at his peak. Just like Su Feng in the team, his performance in all aspects of training this afternoon was outstanding, completely surpassing the rest of the team and fully demonstrating the level of Freiburg's first team. But he just doesn't run actively on the field. He's still in pretty good physical condition. How could that head coach bear that mentally? Dennis felt as if thousands of ants were crawling all over his mind, and he was thinking about how to change Su Feng and turn him into a top-notch football player. We'll have to take our time with how to communicate. Let's stop the physical training for today. Steven said with a hint of helplessness, you can see it too, Feng's problem isn't related to physical fitness. Maybe he just doesn't want to run during practice matches. Dennis nodded, then turned and walked off the pitch, somewhat dejected. Alger, that's enough training for today. Take the team and get some rest. Steven gave a brief instruction and then quickly followed. 8 p.m. After having dinner with Steven, Dennis decided to go to Su Feng's dorm to talk about why he wasn't running around on the field. During the meal, they also watched videos of Su Feng's previous matches when he played for Borussia Mönchengladbach U17. It was discovered that Su Feng's strength on the field was gradually improving by leaps and bounds. At the same time, the running distance on the field is gradually shortening. In the end, it didn't even reach 4,000 meters. Thinking about this, Dennis couldn't help but complain to Steven beside him. Do you think the wind might be playing a trick on us? Chapter 11, Bench. The head coach's roller coaster ride. Steven looked speechless, rolled his eyes at Dennis, and then said. He joined our team, definitely so he could play football. What's the point of acting for us? Are you going to sit on the sidelines? Dennis nodded without replying. He felt that Steven was right. Which professional football player would willingly sit on the bench and be kept on the roster by the coach? The reason why Su Feng wasn't actively running on the field must be because of his attitude. I must have a good talk with him later. A few minutes later, the two arrived at the door of room 203 of the players' dormitory. Seeing that the door was not closed, Dennis simply pushed it open and went inside. But a thick cloud of smoke hit him, making it hard for him to open his eyes. Why are people still smoking? Dennis stood there, stunned. As a long-time smoker, he was very familiar with this cloud of smoke. He could even smell that it was Marlboro Black. It was his favorite cigarette brand. But as the smoke dissipated, Su Feng, shirtless, stood there, a cigarette between his fingers, puffing out smoke. Head coach, what brings you here? On the bed, immediately jumped up and walked towards the door when he saw Dennis arrive. Dennis ignored Alger, narrowed his eyes, stared fiercely at Su Feng, and questioned him sharply. You still smoke? Seeing that he had been caught red-handed by Dennis, Su Feng didn't try to hide it and nodded in reply, Don't you know how harmful smoking is to professional athletes? Dennis was enraged by Su Feng's words. You're letting yourself down in your future career. Su Feng shook his head. I don't think so. My physical fitness is quite good, and smoking doesn't have much of an impact on me. Upon hearing this, Dennis felt that Su Feng was somewhat stubborn and wanted to use data to change Su Feng's mind. No impact yet. Look at your running statistics on the field. Don't you think they're terrible? At this point, Steven, who was standing behind him, quickly poked his back with his finger, indicating that he had misspoke and that Su Feng's physical fitness was not bad. Perhaps understanding Steven's meaning, Dennis paused for a few seconds, took a breath, and continued. Then why don't you run around more actively on the field? I looked at your data for Borussia Mönchengladbach today and found that you covered less than 4 kilometers in almost every game. You should know how bad this statistic is for a professional player, right? Modern football, with its faster pace, places higher demands on every player on the field. For a forward who needs to run and break through frequently, averaging 10,000 meters per game is inevitable. But Su Feng's range was less than 4,000 meters. This might be related to my playing style. Su Feng pondered for a moment, then calmly took another drag of his cigarette. I really like Berbatov's style of play, and I even want to be the next Berbatov. That's why I cover such a short distance on the field. Dennis looked furious. It's like a student telling a teacher that they want to go to a vocational school to learn a skill. What teacher doesn't want their students to get into a good university and become white-collar workers in a big company in the future? Dennis also envisioned Su Feng becoming a world-class striker like Messi, Ronaldo, and Ibrahimovic. Although Berbatov is one of the greatest strikers in football history. But how could anyone else easily learn his style of play? Seeing that Dennis was so angry he couldn't speak, Steven quickly stepped in to persuade him. Feng, I know your footwork is excellent, but modern football emphasizes teamwork. You need to run around on the field actively to create more opportunities. Berbatov is a great world-class striker. You can learn his football skills, but you don't have to completely follow his style of play. Dennis's anger subsided slightly after hearing Steven's words. He also didn't want to waste such a talented genius. Su Feng, who at the age of 17 already possesses the ability to be a starting striker for the first team, is indeed a very good choice for the team. Thinking of this, his tense face relaxed slightly. Call. Dennis exhaled a breath of stale air and couldn't help but continue. That's right. You need to run around actively and integrate into the team so that you can execute the plans and tactics set by our coaching staff. Feng shook his head and said firmly. I have my own ideas, Mr. Dennis. Don't forget our bet. I believe I will perform well on the field. These words reignited Dennis's anger, which had just subsided. His mood at that moment was like a roller coaster, going up and down. I was originally thinking of communicating with Feng to encourage him to run more actively on the field and to include him in the starting lineup, but now there's no need for that at all. Good. Dennis gritted his teeth, panting heavily with anger. I look forward to your performance on the field. After speaking, he turned and walked out the door. Stephen gave an awkward laugh. How did things turn out like this again? Didn't I just tell Dennis that I should have a proper conversation with Feng? Why did you storm out before we even finished a few words? He shook his head helplessly and turned to leave the dormitory. Alger was left completely bewildered and asked Feng a question timidly. Feng, what's the deal between you and Mr. Dennis? 3 days later. On Saturday morning, the players went about their daily training as usual on the pitch. Under Alger's supervision and reminders, Feng has not been late for training in the past few days. Stephen went to the locker room on the sidelines to discuss the starting lineup for the afternoon league match with head coach Dennis. After a brief exchange, the two reached a consensus, with the only remaining focus still on Feng. Regarding Feng's attitude, let's try to communicate with him slowly. Stephen, holding the youth team report in his hand, asked Dennis with a puzzled look. Feng will definitely play in the match against Hamburg U17 this afternoon, barring any unforeseen circumstances. He needs to experience the intensity of the German youth team's matches. You're not going to stop him from starting because of the bet, or only bring him on in the last few minutes, are you? That's for sure. Dennis originally wanted to say that the kid would only be allowed to play in the last few minutes, but he stopped himself when he thought about the strength of Hamburg U17 and the club's targets for him this year. Feng's attitude was indeed problematic. Whether on or off the field, his attitude is not that of a qualified professional football player. However, despite this, his role on the field cannot be denied. Their goal-scoring efficiency, organizational ability, tactical understanding, and shooting skills are all among the best in the team. These will greatly help the team, increase its core fighting power, and enable the team to compete with Hamburg U17. Dennis was now somewhat afraid that he would lose his bet, because he had a feeling that, given Feng's ability, he would definitely score at least one goal in this match. Moreover, this premonition was extremely strong. Dennis slowly exhaled a breath of stale air and shook his head, saying, "Buddy, don't worry, I won't let personal reasons interfere with the team's performance. Although Feng won't start in this afternoon's game, I'll bring him on as a substitute." Chapter 12 First match against Hamburg, the home team falls behind. The next day. It was a Saturday, and the usually quiet Freiburg youth training ground gradually filled with fans. Freiburg only has one football team, so the people living there naturally consider Freiburg FC their home team. With Freiburg's first team playing tomorrow, taking some time to watch the youth team's match at the youth academy is a great pastime for these adult football fans. Moreover, there are no tickets required for youth team matches. Each club actively encourages its fans to cheer on the youth team players and support the development of their youth training programs. Beneath the sea of red and black at the youth training base, players from both sides gradually appeared on the green field. In black and red are naturally from Freiburg's U17 team, while those in blue jerseys are from Hamburg's U17 team. They put on their gear and began warming up on the green field. "Feng, there's something I need to tell you." Feng was focused on doing simple juggling drills on the green field when Stephen, the assistant coach of Freiburg U17, walked over. "Although your training results are very good, you will not be starting in this game for the time being. Our coaching staff highly recognizes your technical and tactical abilities. However, since this is your first time joining the team, it might be difficult for you to become familiar with the team situation in youth team matches. Although you were a starter for Borussia Mönchengladbach, the playing styles of our two teams are still very different." Stephen paused, a hint of embarrassment in his eyes, patted him on the shoulder, and continued. "For the first half of this match, you should just watch from the bench. In the second half, depending on the situation, you might be substituted in at the end to get a feel for the youth team's game. Having partnered with Dennis for so many years, he told Steven that he wouldn't withhold enough playing time because of the bet with Feng. But Steven knew that Dennis would most likely still do it. But Steven was still unwilling to bench a talented player, especially in this game that was crucial to the team's performance. He believed that as long as Feng played, he would at least be able to score a goal. Feng nodded and chuckled softly. "Yes, Mr. Steven." In fact, even if Steven didn't say he would come on as a substitute, he knew that head coach Dennis would be petty and keep him on the bench, or even not give him any playing time. Joining a team always starts as a substitute, a rule that football clubs have followed for over a century. Players do need to familiarize themselves with the rhythm and style of play of their new team to avoid being unable to integrate into the team during matches and becoming a liability in those games. As for whether head coach Dennis will deliberately not give him enough playing time because of a bet they made, he guessed it wouldn't happen. As far as he knew, the gap between Freiburg and Hamburg's youth academy was still quite large. Even a draw and a point would be extremely important for Freiburg U17. Just then, the referee blew the whistle to start the match. Beep. Beep. The match officially began amidst the enthusiastic cheers of the spectators in the stands. The first half began with Hamburg U17 kicking off. In this match, Freiburg's head coach Dennis still used the basic 4-3-3 attacking formation he was used in the starting lineup, with a single attacking midfielder and two midfielders, which was both offensive and defensive. Hamburg U17, on the other hand, adopted a 3-4-3 diamond midfield formation, with four midfielders, a single attacking midfielder, a single defensive midfielder, and two left and right midfielders in a diamond formation. This gave them a greater advantage in midfield and allowed them to control possession and the pace of the game very well. After the match started, it was obvious that Hamburg's youth team was much stronger than Freiburg's. Hamburg's four midfielders maintained firm control of the ball, and even if Freiburg managed to steal it, the Hamburg U17 players could quickly move forward to press and win the ball back. In this situation, Freiburg's players failed to mount a single organized attack within 20 minutes. Even when they managed to get the ball near the opponent's penalty area, it would be intercepted by Hamburg's U17 defenders. On the contrary, Hamburg U17's attack was well organized, with several attacks from the flanks delivering the ball to the winger in the penalty area, but their luck seemed to be a bit off. Two shots, one saved by Freiburg's goalkeeper, and the other grazed the post and went out of play. Quickly organize an attack, proactively move forward to find opportunities. Exploit the gaps in their defense. Seeing that the gap in strength between the two sides was still too large, Freiburg was almost being dominated by their opponents. Head coach Dennis called out to Captain Alger, who was in midfield, to adjust the strategy on the field. He knew that with the strength of Hamburg U17, even if he changed the formation to a five-defender, defensive style, they would still find opportunities to score. Instead of defending, it's better to look for more opportunities to score and find a chance to win in dangerous situations. This is the style Dennis likes. However, surviving in dangerous situations often requires bearing the consequences of failed attempts. Dennis's tactical adjustments to the team have clearly not helped them recover from adversity. Instead, they will only exacerbate Freiburg U17's predicament. The team's quick attacking play meant they didn't slowly control the ball in midfield to look for opportunities, but instead directly targeted the open positions of the wingers and made long passes to try to break through. This approach put too much pressure on the individual skills of the two wingers. Ultimately, Freiburg's two wingers failed to break through Hamburg U17's defense, handing over several hard-won possessions to the opponents. This made Freiburg's already pitiful possession rate even worse, dropping to a paltry less than 20. Freiburg, on the other hand, relied on their numerical advantage in midfield to keep the ball firmly under their control, patiently looking for opportunities in the attacking third. In the 38th minute of the match, Hamburg U17 opened up Freiburg's defensive gaps through passing and ball control, and the right winger quickly surged forward from the gap towards Freiburg's penalty area. At that moment, a superb through ball from the midfield arrived just in time for him. The opposing right winger dribbled the ball in, heading straight for the goal, and unleashed a curling shot. Bang! A heavy thud was heard as the football hurtled towards the top corner of the far post. Freiburg's goalkeeper leaped with all his might, but before he could even touch the ball, it slammed fiercely into Freiburg's net. Goal. 1-0. Hamburg U17 took an early lead away from home. After that goal, Freiburg U17 quickly reorganized their attack after the kickoff from the center circle, seemingly eager to catch up before the end of the first half. U17 players, who had just scored, were in high spirits and didn't give Freiburg any chance. Beep. Beep. Not long after, the referee blew the whistle to start the first half, and both teams returned to the sidelines to rest and rehydrate. Chapter 13. The head coach's choice. Feng makes his substitute appearance. During halftime, Freiburg U17 head coach Dennis also realized from the situation on the field that he seemed to have made a bad bet. Given the overall strength of Hamburg U17, his method of quickly organizing and passing the ball is clearly not going to work. He then gave the starting players a new strategy for the second half: break through on Hadid's right flank, rely on Hadid's individual ability to bring the ball into the penalty area, and then cross it into the net. Not long after, the players from both sides went onto the pitch together, and the second half of the game began. The second half began with Hamburg U17 kicking off. With perfect teamwork from the Hamburg players, the ball was quickly brought to the byline. Freiburg's defenders had no choice but to clear the ball out of bounds, but in doing so, they also conceded a corner kick to the opposition. The Hamburg midfielder, wearing a blue jersey, took a near-perfect corner kick from the corner area, which flew directly towards his teammate near the penalty spot. The football arced beautifully through the air, and a Hamburg U17 centre-back leaped high, successfully heading the ball powerfully into the net. Whoosh! The football bounced off the ground and into the net. Less than 5 minutes into the second half, Hamburg U17 scored another goal. 2-0. On the sidelines, assistant coach Steven, sitting on the bench, saw this scene and couldn't help but put his hand to his forehead and sigh. Freiburg U17's performance on the field was simply appalling compared to Hamburg's. Not to mention that they couldn't hold on to the ball in midfield, they couldn't even organize several decent attacks and were completely dominated by the opponent. If no changes are made in the second half, Freiburg will likely suffer a disappointing defeat in their first game of the new season. Thinking of this, he suddenly had the idea of replacing Feng with Feng to change the course of the battle. Oh! Suddenly, a cheer erupted from the stands. Steven put aside his thoughts and quickly looked towards the field. The football stadium was filled with Freiburg fans, and their cheers at this moment must mean that Freiburg had performed well. After turning his attention to the field, he quickly realized why the fans were cheering. Freiburg's right striker, Hardy, has dribbled the ball to the vicinity of the opponent's byline. However, the chances of him cutting inside into the penalty area are slim, as Hamburg's other centre-back has already blocked his path. With no other option, Hardy could only stop the ball in place, dribble it once, and then pass it high into Hamburg's penalty area, attempting to implement head coach Dennis's tactic of crossing the ball to find teammates. Freiburg's centre-forward, coming to contest the header, lived up to expectations, leaping high and successfully heading the ball despite the opposing centre-back's presence. Why? Steven's eyes showed disappointment. Fred's centre-forward hadn't headed the ball in, instead, he had headed it out of bounds, giving the opponent a goal kick. Possession of the ball changed hands again. Dennis, if we don't come up with something soon, we might really lose this game. Steven couldn't help but walk over to Dennis and shrug. Dennis's gaze remained fixed on the field, clearly finding it hard to believe that his header hadn't scored a single point. I've done everything I could. You can see the gap between us and Hamburg U17. No. Steven interrupted Dennis, we can also try putting Feng on, he might be able to change the outcome of the game. A hint of hesitation crossed Dennis's face. He believes that if Feng were to play, it would at least turn the tide and maybe even allow him to score a goal. But doesn't that mean he lost the bet? After a quick mental assessment, Dennis made his decision immediately. Losing face in front of teammates is obviously less important than the team losing the game. Alright, go let the wind warm you up. Steven nodded, immediately walked to Feng's side, and said something somewhat urgently. Feng, hurry up and warm up, it'll be your turn to go up in a bit. Good. Feng nodded slightly and quickly began to warm up, running around on the sidelines. He could tell that Steven and Dennis were in a bad mood. If the team suffers a crushing defeat in their first youth league match of the new season, it will have a significant impact on morale for subsequent games. Head coach Steven finally decided to substitute himself into the game. As Su Feng jogged and warmed up on the sidelines, many Freiburg fans looked on with a hint of confusion. Yellow race? Is he new to the team? I don't think I've seen him during previous games. That should be true. Can people of Asian descent play football? I've heard that football players everywhere are of very low skill levels. You're not quite right. There are still some good players from South Korea and Japan among the yellow-skinned population. One fan recognized the Chinese characters on the back of Su Feng's jersey. However, I can tell from the Feng on the back that he should be Chinese. What? A Chinese person? As the fan finished speaking, the surrounding fans were all stunned, and some even shouted out. China is a well-known football wasteland. With a population of over 1.3 billion, it doesn't even have a few star players playing in Europe, which fully reflects the current state of Chinese football. Fuck, how come they replaced him with a Chinese person? Some fans were very dissatisfied and couldn't help but hurl insults at Su Feng, who was warming up. Their eyes were also fixed on Su Feng on the court, filled with doubt. They couldn't imagine that, when the home team was losing, they would actually try to bring on a Chinese player to turn the tide of the game. After all, in their minds, Chinese people were almost synonymous with trash. May God bless us. At this moment, Su Feng, who was warming up around the field, also inadvertently noticed the gazes of these fans. Having played football in Europe for so long, he certainly knew what those fans' eyes meant. This is a complete questioning of the Chinese people. However, Su Feng had already gotten used to it. Since this was the stereotype people had about Chinese people, there was no point in him complaining. This is a football match, not a debate. Instead of wasting words, let's perform well on the field and use our actions to refute their claims. Soon, Su Feng's tense warm-up ended. The fourth official on the sidelines raised the substitution sign during the next dead ball situation. Freiburg youth team's number 11 right-winger Balk was substituted off, and number 87 Su Feng came on as a replacement. With a hint of disappointment in his eyes, Balk ran to the sidelines, clapped hands with Su Feng, and then sat down on the bench. Although he knew Freiburg had been at a disadvantage throughout the match, he was still quite dissatisfied with the coach's decision to substitute him. After all, it is in this situation that one feels they have the opportunity to truly shine. But now, this opportunity has been handed over to Su Feng. After a brief handover ceremony, Su Feng went onto the field and found his position as a left forward. My first appearance in Freiburg has finally arrived. He had been waiting for this day for a long time. He needs to win the youth league before he can gradually make it into the first team to compete in the German second division. Then, step by step, he gradually became the first brilliant football star of Chinese descent in Europe. Chapter 14 The Insults from the Stands. Marseille spun and kicked. With Freiburg's substitution complete, Hamburg launched their throw-in. Go for it, Wind. Whether we can turn the tide or not depends entirely on you. I believe you have the ability. You keep running around, I'll pass the ball to you. The moment Alger saw Su Feng enter the arena, a glimmer of hope appeared in his eyes. He prayed that Su Feng would move around more on the field and create more opportunities to help Freiburg defeat their opponents. Su Feng smiled and nodded, agreeing. However, it's definitely impossible to get him to run around more in the future. Winning the game is important, but compared to the system's coolness stat, the latter is clearly more important. Moreover, even if he doesn't run, he can still help Freiburg defeat Hamburg. After the Hamburg youth team served, Su Feng slowly walked to his position, maintaining his team's formation. Therefore, the situation on the field did not change at all because of Su Feng's entry. Given the difference in strength between the two players, Su Feng knew that even if he ran actively, it wouldn't make any difference. In most cases, he would still be in a state of being without the ball. So it's better to just move slowly in the attacking third and wait for an opportunity. He couldn't believe that Freiburg wouldn't even have a chance to get the ball to the winger. With Su Feng's appearance, the Freiburg fans sitting in the stands were even more surprised. What the hell is this? Players from a country already considered a wasteland for Chinese football were not favored, and after being substituted on, they didn't even make any active runs. Compared to the winger on the other side, they are the complete opposite. Is it a joke to put someone like that on the field and give him the responsibility of turning the tide? Su Feng's tanking performance caused a huge stir among Freiburg fans. Dennis couldn't help but point at Su Feng on the field, frowning and angrily saying, "What is this kid playing? It's one thing to not be proactive in making runs during the trial. Why is their performance like this in this league match too? Does he not understand the importance of the youth league? Is he treating it like a training match?" Stephen patted Dennis on the shoulder. "Don't rush, the wind has just been changed. Besides, this isn't the first time you've heard about his playing style, is it?" Upon hearing the word style, Dennis felt a slight pain in his chest, and images of Berbatov flashed through his mind. Hopefully, this kid can really become the next Berbatov. Dennis silently prayed in his heart. On the field, Su Feng paced back and forth in the attacking third, his passive defense only exacerbating Freiburg's already dire situation. Fortunately, his teammates knew Su Feng's playing style and didn't complain too much. Instead, they hoped he could step up and score a few more incredible goals like in the training match. For the next 10 minutes, Hamburg continued to dominate Freiburg, but failed to capitalize on many opportunities to extend their lead. Their team's fullbacks, however, were somewhat puzzled. "Why isn't the left winger in front of me making a run? Are we just standing here to make up the numbers?" Without realizing it, he began to think that Su Feng, this Asian man, must also be a football novice. As the fans on the sidelines watched Freiburg's performance on the field, they gradually frowned and began to criticize Su Feng. Why doesn't he run? Did he come to the court for a stroll? That's right. I only saw him run a little during warm-up, and he hardly ran at all after he came on stage. Some fans even showed a look of disgust towards Su Feng. He could have easily run to midfield to receive the ball, then passed it into the penalty area and made a quick forward run. What's the point of bringing on someone like that as a substitute? This isn't a training match, this is a youth team league game. How can a striker play like this? Why would the head coach bring on someone like this? Fans on the sidelines once again pointed the finger at Su Feng, even blaming him for Fred's defeat in the second half. At the same time, the team's head coach was also subjected to a barrage of insults. The voices of doubt grew louder and louder, with quite a few fans sitting near the bench actually putting pressure on head coach Dennis. "Dennis, how could you let a player like that play? Look at his attitude. Is this the report card you submitted to Freiburg? Have you forgotten your results last year? Dennis, if things continue like this, I suggest you resign from your position as head coach of Freiburg U17 as soon as possible. You are not suited to be a football coach." Faced with a barrage of criticism, Dennis regretted letting Su Feng come on as a substitute so readily. It was his fault for not being able to turn him into an excellent striker, but he doesn't deserve such abuse from the fans. Stephen gently patted his shoulder and pointed to the field, gesturing for him to look over. "Dude, calm down. Feng has barely touched the ball on the field yet. I'll talk about what I'm thinking after the match is over. The team has gotten the ball again." Dennis nodded, turning his attention back to the game, ignoring the accusations from the group of extreme fans. At that moment, the match reached the 73rd minute. Freiburg successfully intercepted a pass from Hamburg's midfielder in their own half and regained possession. Faced with Hamburg's high-pressure pressing, Freiburg's teammates passed the ball several times before finally getting it to the feet of the team's playmaker, midfielder Alger. "Here." After observing his surroundings and confirming that there was an opportunity to break through, Su Feng immediately raised his hand to ask Alger for the ball. Bang! Without hesitation, Alger launched a long pass and poked the ball over. After receiving the ball steadily, Su Feng immediately turned around and dribbled towards the goal. Because Hamburg pressed relentlessly, the three defenders were almost crossing the midfield line. Su Feng received the ball in midfield and immediately launched an attack, something the Hamburg defender who was marking him hadn't anticipated. Because he hesitated for a moment when he started, he was already left behind by the time Su Feng received the ball and broke through. Seeing this, Hamburg's other two defenders immediately made a long run to prepare to defend, while the centre-back directly attacked in the direction Su Feng was dribbling the ball. The centre-back closest to Su Feng tried to use his strong physique to intercept the ball. Unfortunately, Feng moved the ball to the side and easily beat him with his agility and speed. Bang! A crisp sound of the ball being touched rang out, and Feng's speed soared. With a powerful slam, he left the two opposing defenders behind him, leaving only the Hamburg defenders and goalkeeper flanking from the other side in front of him. A goal is within reach. Upon reaching the penalty area, Hamburg's defender, despite his considerable speed, managed to block Feng's shot before he could even take a step from the edge of the box. He spread his arms wide, and in order to prevent Feng from getting past him and creating a one-on-one opportunity, he started using his hands to grab at Feng's jersey. Bang! Feng immediately controlled the speed of the ball, turned to shield it, and at the same time flicked the ball back with the sole of his foot, pushing it to the far side of the defensive center-back. The defender, who had been making a long run back to cover, was blocking Feng's path to advance and break through, his center of gravity almost entirely on one side. He saw Feng's footwork and realized he was trying to perform a Marseille turn to get past him. But it was too late to think about it now, his strong physique wasn't enough to give him such superior coordination. Just as he had guessed, Feng turned and used a Marseille turn to get past him, then took a shot without hesitation inside the penalty area. Upon seeing this, the opposing goalkeeper abandoned his defensive duties at the goal and instead moved forward to block Feng's shooting path. Bang! Feng struck the right side of the football with the outside of his right foot. With a crisp sound, the football rose up and drew a beautiful arc in the air, heading towards the far corner of the opponent's goal. Chapter 15, A One-on-One Goal, a Hat-Trick Fantasy. Hamburg U17 goalkeeper. The ball whizzed past him, and he strained with all his might to dive to the left, trying not to block the shot. All it takes is to touch the ball and change its trajectory. Unfortunately, Feng's curling shot was too fast. The Hamburg goalkeeper didn't even touch it. In other words, he practically scored into an empty net. In this situation, any youth player with decent footwork skills can easily score a goal. Not to mention Feng, whose skills are so dominant in the youth training team. Whoosh! As expected, a crisp sound rang out as the football smashed into the goal from the far corner. Goal! Beep! The referee blew his whistle and waved his arms toward the center circle of the field, indicating that the goal was valid. Freiburg U17 pulled one back in the second half. The score is now 1-2, the difference has been narrowed to one goal. Oh! Wind, you're amazing. That was an amazing shot. Seeing Feng decisively pull one back, all the Freiburg players ran towards him excitedly to celebrate the goal. Alger caught him from the front, patting him excitedly on the back. Feng, you were so cool just now. Starting from midfield, he dribbled past 3 players and scored. Hardy, who arrived late, also high-fived Feng in celebration. The Freiburg players had been under pressure the whole time, but now that they had finally scored, their pent-up emotions were finally released. While the Freiburg players were celebrating in a circle, the Hamburg players, who were silently walking towards the midfield to prepare for the kickoff, were filled with shock and frustration. Feng's goal just now was so amazing. Starting from midfield, he dribbled the ball for nearly 30 meters, managed to dribble past the goalkeeper, and calmly slotted the one-on-one shot into the net. This strength made the Hamburg players feel a sense of crisis. The advantage they had painstakingly gained in the first half was easily wiped out by this substitute player in less than 10 minutes. Mike, this kid is really good. You need to keep a close eye on him on defense and don't let him get the ball so easily again. As Hamburg's captain, who possesses exceptional leadership skills, he also analyzed key defensive points with his 3 defenders on his way back to the kickoff position. And you, that Freiburg winger, you were the one who was marking him, right? He pointed to the fullback who had just marked Feng and continued. Look at your performance on the field just now. Were you half asleep and just strolling around the field? They've already dribbled the ball several meters before you even realized it. The reprimanded fullback was somewhat unconvinced, pouting as he said, he was just strolling around on the field. I didn't expect him to suddenly break through with the ball. The Hamburg captain frowned, his gaze involuntarily drifting towards Feng, who was celebrating his goal. Dude, there are many things you don't expect on the field. This kid can score a goal while taking a walk. Can you score a goal while taking a walk? You'd better put some effort into defense later. As his captain shook his head and walked away, the Hamburg fullback felt like he was swallowing a bitter pill, unable to refute it. He couldn't help but turn around and glance at Su Feng a few times. He started planning in his mind how to defend closely after the kickoff, and if all else failed, he would have to resort to a tactical foul. With this goal, Su Feng successfully made everyone on the Hamburg U17 team start to take him seriously. We will no longer regard this Chinese man as a dud who came from a football wasteland. Oh! At that moment, deafening cheers erupted from the Freiburg fans in the stands. All the fans wore expressions of shock. As spectators in the stands, they have a clear view of everything happening on the field. The visual impact of Su Feng dribbling past 3 players and scoring that goal was simply too strong. Some people were still caught up in the moment of the goal and hadn't even realized what had happened. That was a fantastic goal. He was like Freiburg's savior, scoring this goal with his own individual skill. I never imagined that a Chinese person could score such an excellent goal. Some fans who had been prejudiced against Su Feng just moments before felt a stinging pain on their faces, hardly believing what they were seeing. The Chinese player surprisingly became Freiburg's savior, the only one who could break through and score a goal despite the adverse situation. Their attitude towards Su Feng changed dramatically because of this one goal alone. Someone who can score a goal like that must have excellent overall skills. What puzzled them was why Su Feng had been so lazy and had such a poor attitude on the field before scoring this goal. This is not the performance of a good player. But regardless, Su Feng still managed to score a goal. Freiburg fans have temporarily stopped questioning Su Feng. They were still hoping that Su Feng could replicate his previous attack and help the team tie the score. After all, they took the time to watch their own team's youth training program, so they certainly didn't want to see their team lose at home. Fuck, this kid really didn't disappoint me. On the sidelines, after seeing Su Feng score a one-on-one goal, head coach Dennis finally relaxed his clenched hands, which had been tense. That's right, that was a fantastic goal. Steven stood to the side, his eyes fixed on Su Feng on the field, as excited as if he were watching his own child standing on the podium receiving an award. But there's no problem. Aren't the youth players in your own team just like the coach's children? Dude, I told you changing the airflow was the right choice, didn't I? Steven turned his attention away from the field, patted Dennis on the shoulder, and spoke with a smile. This goal is enough to shut all the fans up. Dennis nodded, glancing around the stands and noticing that the fans were indeed cheering for the goal. All the doubts and criticisms directed at him have now vanished. Dennis, somewhat smug, couldn't help but swear, damn it, why are they all shut up now? If Feng scores another goal and equalizes the score, I bet they'll all praise my excellent substitution skills. Steven couldn't help but chuckle softly, giving him a somewhat deliberate reminder. Feng has already scored in this match, so it seems you've lost your bet with him, right? Dennis was slightly taken aback, but chuckled a few seconds later. If you lose, you lose. Besides, we've already lost, let this kid score one more goal and tie the score for me. Don't you wish Feng could pull off a hat trick and score the winning goal against Hamburg at the last minute? Steven asked, staring into Dennis's eyes with interest. Upon hearing Steven's words, Dennis couldn't help but imagine the scene he described. A Freiburg Youth Academy player making his first substitute appearance. He came on as a substitute for 30 minutes when the team was trailing by a large margin. He scored a hat trick in his debut. As he spoke, Dennis's lips curled up slightly. He believes that under his guidance, Feng will definitely become the most outstanding talented player in Freiburg's U17 team. Beep. Beep. On the field. The referee blew the whistle for a new round of serves, promptly shattering Dennis's illusions. The two coaches on the bench once again turned their attention to the field. Chapter 16: A narrow escape, Freiburg's last chance. The match restarted, and the Hamburg U17 players took the center circle ball. The match has now reached 75 minutes, with approximately 15 minutes remaining until the end. For Hamburg, facing the relatively weak Freiburg in their first match of the new season is certainly a very favorable situation. If they win this game and get 3 points, it will be a great start to the season. This is very important for the players' morale. After all, the team's points have consistently remained at the top of the youth league, which is pleasing to the eye. Not to mention the club's goals and rewards. At this moment, the head coach of the Hamburg youth team is patiently observing the situation on the field from the bench. He was determined to get those 3 points and couldn't afford to make any mistakes. He initially thought that based on the momentum of the first half, they could easily win the game, but the winger that Freiburg's youth team brought on in the second half, with his outstanding individual ability, made him feel inexplicably worried. Let Beige come down, Blake come on, switch to a 4-4-2 formation. Pay attention to possession in midfield, slowly build up the attack, and don't give Freiburg any chance to launch a quick counterattack. When Hamburg's head coach saw that the striker named Baggy on the field seemed to be panting heavily and his stamina was obviously not keeping up, he immediately made a substitution and changed the tactics. The original highly offensive 3-4-3 formation was replaced with a more balanced formation with 4 defenders. He must minimize all uncertainties on the field. Feng was the one he was most worried about, so he substituted 4 defenders to strictly shut him down. The assistant coach quickly took the prepared substitution card and went to the 4th referee. When the ball was out of play, Hamburg's centre-back immediately came on. Under the Hamburg coach's tactics, the Hamburg team did not press as hard as in the first half, but instead steadily passed the ball back to the defenders and played a ball control game in their own half. On the field, the Hamburg youth team completely controlled the pace of the game. For the next 5 minutes, Hamburg controlled possession almost entirely, and Freiburg had absolutely no chance to organize an attack. The match has reached the 80th minute. Hamburg finally seized the opportunity. Taking advantage of their numerical superiority in midfield, they executed a series of exquisite short passes in the attacking third, successfully creating gaps in Freiburg's defense. At the same time, their players quickly moved forward, successfully opening a breach on the flanks of Freiburg's backfield. The Hamburg midfielder, with excellent footwork, cut inside and carried the ball into the penalty area. He then dribbled past a Freiburg centre-back, leaving only Freiburg's goalkeeper between him and the goal. Bang! Without hesitation, the Hamburg midfielder took a shot from the edge of the penalty area, curling the ball under his left foot and sending it flying towards the top corner of Freiburg's goal. Hiss! In the stands, Freiburg fans couldn't help but feel a chill for their team when they saw the opponent unleash a long-range shot from the edge of the penalty area. Even Freiburg's youth team coach, Dennis, was somewhat afraid that the high-quality long-range shot would blow open his own goal, so they all stood up and stood on tiptoe to check the trajectory of the ball. That's way too dangerous. If Hamburg can score another goal at the 80-minute mark, Freiburg will have no chance of turning the game around. It's very difficult to come back from 2 goals down in 10 minutes. Freiburg's goalkeeper clearly didn't expect the opponent to shoot directly from that position. He hesitated for a moment before lunging towards the direction the football had flown. However, it's difficult to predict where this curved ball will land. Duong! A dull thud rang out as Hamburg's midfielder's long-range shot, perhaps due to an attempt to find the perfect angle, hit the top of the goalpost. The football bounced off the line after being hit. Freiburg escaped death. Upon seeing this, the Hamburg midfielder who had just taken the shot showed a hint of disappointment in his eyes, waved his arm fiercely as if to express his unwillingness, and then immediately turned and ran towards the midfield. Throughout the stadium, almost everyone's heart was in their throat from that long-range shot. That was a crucial shot that determined the outcome of the game. The game resumed quickly. Freiburg's goalkeeper quickly grabbed a new football from the assistant referee and placed it in front of the goal to prepare for a goal kick. These final 10 minutes are crucial in determining the outcome of the game. The Freiburg players, trailing behind, dared not waste a single second of time. Perhaps because the game was about to end, the Hamburg players quickly retreated and began to defend after Freiburg took the goal kick. Their victory would obviously be much easier than Freiburg's. As long as Freiburg can't score in the last 10 minutes, they can equalize the score. After receiving the goal kick from the goalkeeper, the Freiburg players quickly began to press forward with the ball, rapidly organizing the attack. They must seize possession of the ball, which is not easily obtained. After several passes, the ball was quickly passed across Freiburg's half of the field. Bang! After receiving the ball, the midfielder saw that Feng intended to receive it back, so he passed the ball directly to him. Upon seeing Feng regain possession of the ball, Hamburg's entire defense immediately tensed up, focusing their attention on marking him to prevent him from once again breaking into the penalty area alone. After receiving the ball, Feng calmly dribbled forward while observing the situation on the field. Seeing the opposing fullback charging fiercely towards him, Feng flicked the ball with his foot, sending it towards the opponent's sideline. A look of worry immediately appeared on the face of the Hamburg fullback, who was afraid that Feng would accelerate down the wing and beat him and the ball together. He will become a laughing stock in the Hamburg youth team because of this match. Therefore, he was forced to break immediately and quickly stretched out his foot towards the sideline to block him, attempting to use his physical advantage to keep him outside the sideline in the backfield. But this was entirely a feint by Feng. He stepped forward with his left foot, quickly poked the ball to the right, and at the same time made a brilliant turn, directly getting past the fullback. And as Feng had planned, the football reappeared at his feet as promised. However, a Hamburg centre-back was positioned near the penalty area, ready to cover at any moment. He certainly didn't want the fullback to be beaten so easily. However, this fullback is clearly disappointing and is destined to become the laughing stock of the whole team. Facing the centre-back's cover, Feng had already dribbled the ball to the edge of the penalty area. If he were to shoot from this position, his shot would definitely be blocked. Therefore, he decisively chose not to shoot, but instead passed the ball back to midfielder Alger, who was making a run forward from the center. A perfect inverted triangle is formed. The ball was passed to Alger, and as a veteran of the youth team, he calmly raised his foot and shot the ball toward the opponent's goal. Bang! But before the ball even reached the goal, Hamburg's other centre-back immediately stepped forward and used his back to block it hard. The football bounced back into Hamburg's penalty area. At this tense moment, Alger was unaware that Feng had already returned to the penalty area from near the baseline. And it perfectly predicted the ball's landing point. Oh no! Stop him! One of Hamburg's centre-backs almost screamed, but it was clearly too late. They don't have Feng's ball control and can judge the ball's landing point so accurately. Soon, the ball had landed at Feng's waist. Almost as if by muscle memory, he lifted his foot and struck the rapidly falling soccer ball with his side foot. Bang! Chapter 17, A Brace, Hamburg defender's powerful tackle. A crisp sound rang out. The high-speed bouncing football was kicked by Feng, changing its trajectory and shooting straight towards the goal like an arrow. With Van Persie's star skills on his side, this was a high-quality volley. The football flew through the air, presenting a very strange arc. The entire football field seemed to freeze for a moment. No one made a sound or any further movement, because the Hamburg defenders simply couldn't react to such a sudden volley. They could only stare at the football, praying that it would glide past the goalposts and fly out of bounds. The Hamburg goalkeeper was completely dumbfounded after hearing the loud bang. He didn't expect that the football, which had just been cleared, would fly towards his own goal again. The crowded restricted area completely blocked his view. By the time he saw the football, it had already flown into the penalty area, only 2 meters from the goal. At such a short distance, he couldn't make any effective saves. Whoosh! As expected, the football once again slammed into the goal. Goal! Freiburg pulled one back in the final 10 minutes. The score is currently tied at 2-2. Feng's 2 goals successfully leveled the score. Beep! The referee blew his whistle and pointed to the center circle, indicating that the goal was valid. Fuck, this kid hardly moves at all on the field. Is it really that difficult to stop him from getting the ball? On the sidelines, Hamburg's head coach looked grim, his face dark as he pointed at his players and berated them, who was standing at the edge of the penalty area just now. The opposing wingers suddenly broke into the penalty area, didn't they know to cover? Don't you feel extremely ashamed to concede a goal like that? The Hamburg coach's voice was loud, and he was out of breath after he finished speaking. In his first match of the new season, he faced a team ranked lower in the standings and managed only a draw, which certainly made him very angry. Moreover, in the first half of the match, they completely dominated Freiburg, pinning them to the ground. But in the second half, everything changed after that young Chinese player came on as a substitute. The opponent's first goal was actually caused by Hamburg's weak defense and the players' underestimation of Feng. But wasn't the second goal a bit unacceptable? Despite being closely marked by two defenders, he still managed to dribble the ball to the byline, deliver the winning pass, and even scored on the rebound after his shot was blocked. How did such an incredible player end up in Freiburg instead of Hamburg? Hamburg's head coach thought for a long time but couldn't come up with an answer, and shook his head regretfully. "That's amazing, Feng. You are truly Freiburg's savior." Cheers erupted once again on the field. His Freiburg teammates surrounded Feng, patting him on the shoulder in celebration. Today, it was entirely Feng's individual skills that reversed the score on the field. If it weren't for him, these young players from Freiburg's youth academy would never have been able to hold their heads high on the football field. The Hamburg players standing behind them had faces full of frustration. Hearing the coach's reprimands from the sidelines, they lowered their heads even further. Especially the two defenders who were marking Feng just now, they couldn't understand why they had made such a serious mistake. Perhaps it was because the number 87 player, wearing Freiburg's black and red jersey, was running around lazily on the field and didn't attract much attention, or perhaps it was because he had strong off-the-ball movement skills and tactics. In short, it's all because of Feng. Freiburg's left winger, Balk, sitting on the bench, twitched his eyelids slightly when he saw what was happening. He scored twice to equalize against the strong Hamburg U17 team in a very short time. Such an outstanding performance is enough to secure Feng's starting position. Even though Feng hasn't yet adapted to Freiburg's playing style and his attitude might be questionable, this doesn't preclude him from eventually replacing him as Freiburg's starting winger for U17. Thinking of this, Balk couldn't help but cover his eyes with his hands, not daring to look at the field anymore. Go Freiburg! Go, number 87! As Freiburg scored, deafening cheers erupted once again from the stands. The fans at the scene completely changed their attitude towards Feng at this moment, and no one openly questioned Feng's negative attitude on the field anymore. Let's put those things aside. Freiburg's number 87 player, Feng, was undoubtedly the savior of this match. The game resumed shortly afterward. Hamburg U17 initiates a shot from the center circle. Perhaps it was the pride of these kids that got the better of them. After the ball was served, without any instructions from the head coach, they pressed hard into the attacking third, attempting to break through Freiburg's goal and score the winning goal at the last moment. This is to save face for them. On the sidelines, Hamburg's head coach looked unusually grim. He knew that the players' impulsiveness at the last minute would come at a heavy price, but he also had to save face. If they lose away from home, it would be a real upset. The match has reached the 85th minute. Hamburg's coach's worst fears came true. During a quick short pass, their midfielders were unexpectedly dispossessed by Freiburg's defenders. Possession shifted to Freiburg, and they immediately launched a quick counter-attack under the organization of their captain, Alger. The football was passed around several times before finally reaching Hardy's feet. Through persistent training, he received the ball, quickly turned and started, and with a powerful layup, dribbled straight into the opponent's penalty area. Upon discovering that Freiburg had launched a counterattack, the Hamburg players were unwilling to let their last fig leaf of a draw be so easily removed. Several defenders immediately chased back desperately. A few seconds later, Hardy had dribbled the ball to the outside of the penalty area, more than 30 meters from the goal. The only Hamburg defender who managed to get back saw that things were not going well and immediately made a reckless tackle on the ball. Hardy skillfully deflected the ball to the side with his right foot, attempting to dodge the opposing defender using his coordination. But Hamburg's defender came with the intention of committing a tactical foul, so how could he let Hardy slip away so easily? Bang! The Hamburg defender made a sliding tackle, hitting Hardy on the left side of his foot. He lost his balance and fell heavily onto the grass. Beep! Upon seeing this, the referee immediately blew the whistle for a foul and ran over to show a yellow card to the center-back who made the tackle. Hearing the commotion, Freiburg players rushed over and helped Hardy up from the ground, showing concern for his injury. Fortunately, the Hamburg defender's tackle was aimed at the ball and didn't hit Hardy's shin, otherwise, it would have been a serious foul. After simply standing up and moving his left leg a few times, Hardy was able to move his left leg again. Seeing that the players were not seriously injured and were still able to continue the game, the referee awarded a free kick for the foul. While the players were forming a wall, Dennis, sitting on the bench, couldn't help but shake his head. Hamburg pushed forward too far just now, which caused our other two forwards to be positioned too far back. Otherwise, Hardy could have easily chosen to pass the ball to someone else. As he spoke, Dennis turned his gaze to Feng. Besides, the wind doesn't seem to be moving at all. Cough cough cough. Stephen coughed awkwardly a few times, then smiled and said, "You know Feng's playing style, right? He only runs actively when he has the ball and is attacking. Besides, he has already performed very well in this game. You always have to give other players a chance to shine. Furthermore, it's not a good thing if the entire team has to rely on Feng to carry the load." Dennis ignored Stephen's words and instead turned his attention back to Alger on the field, who was preparing to take a free kick. Chapter 18 Hat-trick, the first victory of the league. Beep. After both teams were ready, the referee blew the starting whistle. Because the free kick was still more than 30 meters away from the goal, Freiburg's youth team did not yet have any outstanding free kick masters who could score from such a distance. And this ball was crucial to the outcome of the match. If Freiburg scores this goal, they will have a last-minute victory against their opponents. So the team chose the safest approach, a cross to score. The team's captain, Alger, who is known for his excellent crossing ability, took the free kick, while the other players scored with headers and follow-up shots inside the penalty area. Alger stood in front of the ball, but instead of rushing to kick it, he observed the positioning on the field. Hamburg simply sent out a few forwards to make a symbolic attempt to block the shot. The rest of the players stood near the penalty spot, waiting for the ball to land when it was crossed. After waiting a moment, Alger took a deep breath, adjusted his condition, and then slowly took a run up, kicking the bottom of the ball with the outside of his foot. Bang! The football soared into the air, reached its highest point, and then plummeted rapidly, its target landing point being near Hamburg's penalty spot. At this moment, the taller defenders from both sides were in position, their eyes fixed on the ball, waiting for it to fall so they could make a run for it. Alger's free kick was of very good quality, with little error, and the ball landed steadily in the air above the penalty spot. Hamburg's 1.95-meter tall centre-back, after pinpointing the ball's trajectory, confidently leaped into the air. Two Freiburg defenders jumped at the same time as him. However, Hamburg centre-back clearly has a significant height advantage, and his jumping ability is also outstanding. When he leaped into the air, he was noticeably much taller than Freiburg's two defenders. Bang! Successfully secured the spot. The ball was violently headed away by the Hamburg defender and flew out of the penalty area. On the sidelines, just as the Hamburg head coach breathed a sigh of relief, he suddenly realized that the figure he had resented throughout the second half was back near where the ball had landed. Wearing Freiburg's number 87 jersey, Feng once again correctly predicted the ball's landing point and appeared beneath it first. What terrifying judgment ability is this? Hamburg's head coach stared intently at Feng's figure, slowly exhaling a breath of stale air. Judging from the positioning on the field, Feng was not defended by any Hamburg players. All their focus was on winning the header from that free kick. Even the two forwards, after completing their wall duties, stood frozen in place, waiting for the ball to bounce. In other words, Feng is currently completely undefended. He could easily take another shot from outside the penalty area, or even cross the ball. Hamburg's crisis is far from over. Bang! Once the ball landed within Feng's reach, he didn't hesitate and unleashed a powerful volley aimed directly at the goal. With a dull thud, the football, already carrying immense momentum, changed direction again and headed towards the goal. The ball was perfectly controlled by Feng, and it drew a perfect rainbow arc in the air, soaring high over the crowd standing near the penalty spot before rapidly falling, its momentum about to crash into Hamburg's goal. The Hamburg goalkeeper felt a slight psychological shadow cast over his mind after seeing Feng's shots. Is this the kind of shot a 17-year-old youth team player should be making? He has only been the starting goalkeeper for Hamburg's youth team for less than half a year, so why is he suffering so much? Despite a fleeting negative emotion, the Hamburg goalkeeper gritted his teeth and prepared to make a save as the ball was about to hit the ground. He wants to catch this ball to prove his worth as a starter. However, the trajectory of the football's descent was very unpredictable, and he was unable to accurately determine where the football would land. The football slammed past his side and landed hard in front of the goal, then bounced off and easily flew into the net. Goal! In the final 3 minutes of the match, Su Feng's long-range volley sealed the victory. Freiburg 3-2. Defeat Hamburg, a strong team in the youth league, at home. Beep. The head coach blew the whistle again, pointed to the center circle with both hands, and announced that the goal was valid. Immediately, enthusiastic applause erupted from the stands. Marvelous. Player number 87 has scored all the goals in this match. What's his name? Don't you know Chinese? Tell me quickly. With such terrifying strength, I believe he'll soon be joining the first team, right? Freiburg's head coach, Dennis, sitting on the bench, couldn't help but jump up and wave his fists. Scoring at this point already declared Freiburg a home victory. Perhaps feeling that waving his arms around wasn't enough to vent his anger, Dennis walked off the bench, stood at the edge of the field with his hands outstretched, and looked at the fans in the stands. It's as if they're showing off how brilliant their substitution tactics are. The victory in this match was entirely due to his timely substitutions. Not long after, Hamburg kicked off again from midfield. But by then, only 1 minute remained, and with the added time in the second half, there weren't even 5 minutes left. Beep. Beep. Before Hamburg could mount a single effective attack, the referee blew the final whistle. Freiburg U17 defeated a strong opponent at home, securing their first league victory of the new season. This was an unexpected result. But today, thanks to Su Feng's 3 goals, it was done. At that moment, a mechanical voice echoed in Su Feng's mind. Ding! Congratulations, host, on winning this competition. Running distance, 1462 m, rating, S. 3 cool points. Current coolness value, 9. After the match ended, the Hamburg players walked dejectedly towards the sidelines. Sports competitions are cruel, in every match there can only be one winner, and the other can only be a loser. And today, coincidentally, they are the ones who lost. Seeing the players' gloomy faces, the Hamburg coach forcibly swallowed the anger he had just prepared. Freiburg's youth academy is considered relatively weak within Germany's youth training system, consistently ranking near the bottom of the youth league for several years. Therefore, Hamburg's head coach was no less disappointed than the players. However, he felt that Hamburg U17 did not lose to Freiburg today, they only lost to the number 87 player wearing Freiburg's black and red jersey. Afterwards, he simply told the players to leave the stadium and go to the gate to catch the bus to leave Freiburg. Before long, the Hamburg players finished packing up and all left the stadium. The rest of the time was for the Freiburg players to celebrate. Oh! The fans on the sidelines cheered, celebrating their team's victory in this way. This is perfectly normal in Germany, where football culture is deeply ingrained. The youth team players deserve his applause and flowers for their victory. Feng, that long-range volley you just used was absolutely awesome. I never knew you were so skilled. I think you can take all the team's free kicks from now on. Captain Alger immediately rushed to Su Feng's side and celebrated with him by bumping fists. That's right, today's victory over Hamburg is all thanks to you. That's fantastic. A hat trick in his debut. Feng, how did you manage to shoot so accurately from 30 meters away? The Freiburg team gathered together and began their own celebration, showering their team's savior with compliments. If one could guess the outcome with a single shot, Su Feng's 2 consecutive high-quality volleys today have completely turned the entire team into his little fans. Hearing everyone's exaggerated comments, Su Feng scratched his head and replied with a smile, "It's not difficult at all. As long as you train more regularly, you can all do it." Everyone nodded upon hearing this. I secretly vowed that I would never be lazy again and would practice my ball skills properly. Chapter 19 Victory Celebration. Nightclubs are the better choice. After celebrating on the pitch for a while, the Freiburg players returned to the locker room to shower and change. The team members chatted and laughed, and at the same time, they had subconsciously come to regard Su Feng as the core of the team. They had seen how strong Feng was in the training matches and were worried that he wouldn't be able to adapt to the pace of the game and perform to his full potential in the actual competition. But after the second half, Feng scored a hat trick, bringing the score to 3 points. That idea no longer exists. Young people at this age are full of energy and drive. They don't bow down to power and influence, and the people they admire most are strong players. Captain Alger was exceptionally excited. He was wiping his head with a towel and chatting with Feng outside the locker room. "Feng, do you have anything planned for tonight? Your teammates were all impressed by your performance this afternoon and want to invite you out for a celebratory dinner tonight. As a major contributor to today's success, I hope you can participate." Feng smiled and nodded. "I'd be very happy to participate." "That's wonderful." Alger clenched his fist and gently pressed it against Feng's chest to express his excitement. Then, he turned around and asked his teammates, "Have you decided what to eat tonight? Tell me, what are some good restaurants nearby? Let Feng pick one for us." Other Freiburg Youth Academy players have all spent more time at the club than Feng. Therefore, they are very familiar with the local cuisine, and even Alger, a local, sometimes has to consult them about food. The players pointed out several nice Freiburg features. But after hearing about these places, Feng silently sighed. Why are these young guys so serious? Even when going out to celebrate, the restaurants they choose are so formal. It's not a Western restaurant, just a specialty restaurant. In that case, how can Feng conduct special training? Feng paused for a moment, then slowly asked Alger, "Captain, will the coach attend the victory celebration banquet tonight?" Hearing this, Alger was somewhat surprised, wondering why Feng would suddenly ask such a question. However, even though he didn't know the reason, he still answered immediately. "Our team invited you to the victory celebration dinner tonight. We were originally planning to invite Mr. Dennis, but he had some things to do tonight and couldn't make it. The other assistant coaches also declined when they saw that the head coach wasn't going." Upon hearing this answer, Feng's lips curled up slightly. "There's no coach here. Why bother going to a restaurant? Let's just go to a nightclub and drink and dance. In that case, I know a good place. I'll take you there tonight," Feng said with a smile. "No problem, Feng." The other teammates thought that today's celebration banquet was mainly for Feng, and when he mentioned that he had a place he wanted to go, they immediately agreed. Only Alger paused slightly, looking at Feng with a puzzled expression. Feng had only been running the club for less than a week, and he had only gone out on the first day he came. So the place he recommended isn't a nightclub, is it? Instantly, Alger had a bad feeling. Before long, the entire team had finished washing up, changed their clothes, and left Freiburg's youth training base in a lively manner. Feng, Alger, Hardy, and others led the way, while the rest of the team followed behind, chatting and laughing all the way, discussing Feng's amazing goal in the afternoon's match. As they approached the commercial street, Alger saw the familiar buildings around him, and his bad premonition grew stronger. He tugged at Feng's sleeve, leaned close to him, and asked in a low voice. "Feng, the place you're taking us to tonight isn't the same nightclub you went to last time, is it?" "How did you know?" Feng asked, somewhat surprised. Upon hearing the word nightclub, Alger's expression changed. He squinted at Feng and spoke uncertainly. "Feng, you're not kidding, are you?" Alger's expression grew more serious as he spoke. "Professional players are not allowed to go to nightclubs. Youth training teams may be a little more lenient, but almost all first-team coaches are strict and demanding in their players' private lives. If word gets out that you went to nightclubs, your career will be ruined." Feng shook his head dismissively, then looked at Alger meaningfully. "Captain, that's too superficial. We came to the nightclub to celebrate our victory. As long as we keep to ourselves and go home early, it'll be fine. In China, it's unthinkable to have a good time without a drink. Besides, it's not as serious as you make it out to be. Look at Ibrahimovic, he still smokes a cigar to relax after winning a match, doesn't he? Did this affect his status as a legendary player in the world of football? Zlatan Ibrahimovic is a legendary player in the world of football. He is arrogant and tall, and has been nicknamed Big Feng Xian by netizens because he has joined too many wealthy families. He was once photographed smoking a cigar to celebrate after a World Cup qualifier. But this did not have a significant impact on him, instead, it became a label for his personality. Alger was certainly aware of these things, but his professional football philosophy was so deeply ingrained that he couldn't accept Su Feng's views for the time being. But in today's league match, it was Su Feng who single-handedly turned the tide and reversed the situation against Hamburg. After thinking for a while, Alger, as the team captain, didn't want to dampen the spirits of Su Feng, the team's key player, causing a rift in their relationship and affecting the team's performance. Moreover, it's only one nightclub visit, and as long as the coaching staff doesn't find out, nothing will happen. After walking for less than 10 minutes, they arrived at the nightclub that Su Feng had visited last time. Standing at the entrance of the nightclub, these greenhorn boys seemed a little reserved. After all, they had been obsessed with football throughout their childhood. "Feng, are you taking us to a nightclub to celebrate tonight?" A starting defender from Freiburg looked puzzled and asked Su Feng a question. "That's right, we won the game, so of course we have to go to a nightclub for a few drinks to celebrate. But, our coaches have told us since we were young that professional players can't drink alcohol, because it will harm their bodies and affect their physical performance." Alger walked over to the defender, patted him on the shoulder, and spoke to the people around him. "It's okay. In the land of wind, it is customary to celebrate victory with a drink. We're only here once, so drinking less and going home early won't cause any problems." When everyone saw that Alger, as the team leader, had said this, all their concerns were dispelled. The children, whose hormones are surging, are curious about this dazzling world, and were originally afraid to come into play because of the strict requirements of the coach. But with my teammates by my side this time, giving it a try is a good option. Chapter 20. An old friend visits, and they meet the players outside the bar. At the same time, inside the head coach's office at the Freiburg youth training ground, a slightly short, middle-aged German man in a suit lay wearily on the sofa, chatting with Dennis. "Ed, what wind blew you back to Freiburg?" Dennis handed a cup of coffee to the man named Ed with a smile. "My father ran into some trouble in Freiburg, and I came back to help resolve it." Ed took the coffee, took a small sip, and then, as if he had no appetite, put the coffee down on the table. U17 defeated Hamburg U17, a strong youth academy team, at home today. Ed seemed unwilling to discuss why he returned to Freiburg, and instead steered the conversation towards football. He and Dennis are both from Freiburg, and they have known each other since they were children. They once joined Freiburg FC's youth academy as assistant coaches. In recent years, Ed went to Duisburg's first team in the 2. Bundesliga as an assistant coach, while Dennis was promoted to head coach of Freiburg's youth academy team. As a native of Freiburg, Edby still considers Freiburg his second home team and pays close attention to the youth training situation of his old friend. That's right, a resounding 3-2 victory over Hamburg. A smug look appeared on Dennis's face. As the head coach, defeating a strong youth training team in the first game of the new season is indeed something to be proud of. Furthermore, I have discovered a player with outstanding technical and tactical abilities. I believe that it will not be long before he is dominating the Bundesliga and invincible. Ed paused for a moment, then squinted at Dennis. "Could the player you're talking about be the Chinese player who came on as a substitute today?" Dennis nodded. He wasn't surprised that Ed knew about Su Feng's existence. After all, Su Feng's performance today was outstanding, dispelling the doubts that fans had about him, and thus generating a lot of buzz among fans. "I heard he has excellent footwork, and he came on in the last 20 minutes and scored 3 goals. Ed said, his mouth agape, somewhat incredulous. Newcomers to a team usually come on as substitutes to get used to the team's rhythm, but this Chinese player scored 3 goals in his first game, helping Freiburg's youth team to reverse the game against the strong team Hamburg. With that kind of ability, he could definitely compete in the German second division, and might even be a starter in a weaker team." Thinking of this, Ed couldn't help but think of his team, Duisburg, last season, barely avoiding relegation. Without any strong foreign players being brought in for the new season, it's safe to say that this season will be another nail-biting battle for points to try and avoid relegation. Slowly exhaling a breath of stale air, Ed spoke up somewhat embarrassedly. "Dennis, I think this Chinese player is very strong and has the ability to play in the German second division. Have you considered renting him out? If there is an option, you can definitely consider Duisburg, where I coach. I can guarantee that this kid will definitely be a key player there. Upon hearing this, Dennis's face instantly darkened. Feng is a new player that Freiburg U17 just brought in this season. He hasn't even finished a season yet, and he won a youth league championship for the team. How could they possibly be willing to loan Feng out? Ed, don't even think about poaching him. Dennis's tone was very firm. He hasn't even finished the season yet, there's no way I'm going to let him go. Besides, Freiburg's first team is also playing in the 2. Bundesliga, so Freiburg would definitely be his first choice to play in the 2. Bundesliga. I believe that Mr. Streich, the head coach of Freiburg's first team, would also be unwilling to give up such a good young player. Ed nodded. His idea to bring in Feng was just a spur-of-the-moment decision, to see if Dennis had any intention of selling him. Even if they don't have it, it won't affect their dinner together that evening. It's getting late, let's go out for a drink. Dennis lit a cigarette, stood up from the sofa, and interrupted their conversation about Feng's rental. Okay, the usual place. After Ed finished speaking, he got up and followed Dennis out of the Freiburg youth training base, heading towards the commercial street to the north. When the two coached together in Freiburg, they often went to a small pub on the north side of the shopping street for a drink after matches. Ed finally got to go back to Freiburg, so he definitely had to go for another drink with Dennis. On the road, both of them complained about some unsatisfactory things that happened to them at the club in recent years. However, perhaps because both of them are football coaches, the conversation eventually turned to the club's performance. When it comes to achievements, Dennis and Ed are practically brothers who have been through thick and thin together. The teams they coached have had disappointing results in recent seasons. However, Dennis's situation is somewhat different. He saw hope this season. A hope for the team to qualify for the youth league. At this thought, Dennis couldn't help but boast about Feng's outstanding talent. At the age of 17, his skillful footwork and breathtaking volley were truly awe-inspiring. Dennis became more and more excited as he spoke, describing Feng's every move on the field in vivid detail, without even having time to shake off the ash from the cigarette he was holding. After his teammate passed the ball, he didn't even stop it, and volleyed it into the net from the waist. Pedestrians who weren't paying attention to the football match looked at the two of them with puzzled expressions. Seeing how excited one of them was describing it, they assumed it was about the Champions League final. Ed couldn't help but gasp in amazement when he heard Dennis's story. This kid has such a good feel for the ball. He knew that Dennis wouldn't exaggerate just because it was one of his own players. In other words, the 20 minutes this Chinese kid spent on the field were all highlight performances. That's right. Dennis responded, his gaze involuntarily drifting towards Ed. But the next second, he was surprised to find that several of his teammates were hiding behind a neon-lit sign. Barry, what are you doing here? Dennis called out the name of one of the center-backs with a puzzled look, then turned his gaze to the signboard. The words on it, written in bright colors, read, Midnight Forest Bar.